Mentality is what keeps us together.
It's Saya.
Hey, I'm Carol.
It's Tiffany.
It's Nicole, and this is what keeps us together.
Basically, the group chat in your head.
Living rent free.
Welcome
back.
And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
Yeah.
All right. So today, if you haven't noticed, we have a special guest with us today, Mrs. Deneen Vaughn. Hey.
Welcome.
Yes,
welcome. Mrs. Deneen Vaughn is the founder and CEO of the Mind and Wellness Foundation. In her professional life, she's an executive producer of events, but she's most proud of being a wife and mother and nana to two beautiful grandkids. We're so glad you're here today. Thank you
for having me.
Of course.
Thank you.
Okay, so this week, the song of the week is going to be a song that helped you get through your week or a song that helped describe your week. Who wants to go first?
Okay, I'll go first.
Okay.
I've been listening to, I regret saying this, but Kanye West Sunday Service Choir.
Oh.
And Father Stretch My Hands has been like on repeat.
Oh, yeah.
Since y'all know it, I won't sing it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think that's what you're waiting for.
Well, usually we have to sing it because no one knows the song, but I'm pretty sure you guys all know it.
Does our audience though?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah,
cop out.
Yeah, so that's what's been playing heavy on my playlist this week.
Okay, I'll go.
Okay.
This is going to be problematic because I don't necessarily know how the whole song goes.
You don't have to sing the whole 3 minutes.
I say it's fine.
Well, okay. Anyway, it's I actually played the song for y'all. Is it Blessed Up by Maverick City and Kirk Franklin?
Why would that be problematic?
Well, not the song being problematic.
yeah.
Like, I don't know the words or how it goes right now to tell you. Just look it up. I'm not doing all of that. Just look it up.
It is a good song.
It's a great song. It's like the perfect blend of gospel and trap. So I'm
That's
like
how
in the
I feel
car.
about Father Stretch My Hands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can get your little groove on while praising the Lord. Hallelujah.
What's the groove? Do it one more time.
No.
I want to see you do it. Kylie would be proud.
Oh, hold on, wait. This is just for you.
Wow, I'm really impressed.
Yeah. Oh, wait, I got the whole dance.
Look at you ticky-tocking over here.
It's the tiki-tock.
Yeah.
It's my tiki-tock moves.
Good for
Follow
you.
me. Follow me.
Yes.
There's no videos there,
Follow
though.
me.
There's no videos.
She posts once a month.
Okay.
The same amount that she's in our group chat.
Right. And she'll like anything. You
know
put anything
what?
out there, she gonna
All
like
right,
it.
next song.
It's enough slander for one
Right.
point.
I can go next.
Okay.
My week, these kids have tried my
They're
soul.
not even your kids.
They're not even my children. And I'm just like, we might have to send these kids back. It was a hard week. And I had to keep telling myself, I love these kids.
Oh.
I love these children.
Yes, to her employer. She loves these kids.
Yes, I do. I really, really do. But there were moments where I was really, really tried. So I think this week, the song that comes in my head is Trick Daddy, Trick Love the Kids.
I'm sick.
I definitely thought you were about to go, that's the way love goes. But
No.
Trick Daddy.
I needed something to just, okay, we just gonna roll into the next move, roll into the next day. Because the kids was trying.
I think we should move on. I'm scared for your employment status after this episode drops.
They already know about their children.
That's why they hired help.
Right.
Fair.
This ain't nothing new.
Fair enough.
Okay, my song of the week is it's a Sir song. It's Life is Good. And so basically the chorus is life is good, and that has been on a loop in my brain. So
It's by who, sir?
yeah.
Don't know if I'm familiar.
Really? Oh, I like
You would like his
Yeah.
you would really like his
good.
I've never
Okay.
heard of this individual.
Oh, well great. I gotta get y'all
so
hip.
yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Fire.
Okay.
All right.
yes.
Very good.
Miss Deneen, how about you?
Got a song of the week?
So my song of the week has been to kind of get me through and push through was CC Peniston.
Okay. Yes.
Ladies.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
You don't need me to sing it for you.
Oh, come on, sing
Well,
about
we
it.
do want- we do need the song title.
One bar.
Oh, I think it is Keep On Walking. So okay.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes.
Keep on walking. I ain't
Yes.
talking
Oh,
to
okay.
you anymore. Is the chorus.
Yes.
I don't know
yes.
the rest of the words.
Okay.
That's all.
That's
all you needed.
Just whatever was in
So
your
it's
head.
that
you
keep on-
just
done
sing.
it with the
vocals.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's a
Came
good
to our
one.
podcast
Okay.
and showed us up.
Okay.
Jeez.
Right.
I'm not.
Yes, I'm not going back either. So we're gonna have to let it rock.
Right. What y'all got? What y'all got?
All right. So today's cultural reference is centered around the Mind and Wellness Foundation. So Miss Deneen, who is the CEO and founder of this foundation, is there anything else that you would like us to know about you or the foundation?
You said it all in my little short bio, but just that I'm passionate about our people. I'm passionate about our culture, and I'm passionate about young people. And I'm just passionate about, we'll get into what Mind and Wellness is and why, but the why behind it. But obviously there's a great deal of passion about being able to kind of influence and be able to encourage and being able to connect people overall, but particularly in our culture right now.
Okay.
So growing up, what was the conversation around mental health in your house?
There wasn't.
Okay. Seems to be a trend in
There wasn't.
African American families. Has that changed since you had kids, or did that change when you had kids?
Not specifically about mental illness. We talked openly in our household. It was this conversation, having 3 Black male sons, first off. I didn't know what the heck when I had them. Like, how did I end up blessed with 3 kings? But I don't know that we started having conversations just around mental health. It was whatever you got, bring it to the table. As long as you guys are respectful to us.
Yeah.
Whatever you got to say, you can say it here, or you can talk it through here.
That's an anomaly.
That kind of-
Yeah. The open
For sure.
conversation.
I'm sitting looking at my husband. I'm not sure where and why. I wanted a place where I didn't have that place
Yeah.
to be able to be open, to be honest, to be heard.
Right.
I wanted great relationships with my son and I. My sons and I didn't. I don't think we knew any other way except to let's talk about it.
Right.
We, the good, the bad, the ugly,
Mm.
and whatever it was, we tried to figure it out. If it was ugly, and work through it together. That was kind of been our overall approach. So there were definitely conversations as he got older to talk about mental health, to talk about life, to talk about death, to talk about any of those things. Just didn't know it was going to hit so close.
I think growing up, you definitely felt like the cool mom. Like out of all the moms.
Yeah. Cool mom.
Yeah, I think you just have that demeanor of being like very easy to talk to.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can see how that would translate obviously to your kids, because it translated over to
I think
us.
it was good.
Yeah,
Right.
too. Yeah.
Do you want to explain your relationship?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess that would be important. So I went to high school with Miss Neen's oldest son, Kevin. And then my little brother was best friends with her middle child, Chris. And then Cam, the youngest, I guess, was just always around. Miss Neen's and her husband are also really good friends with my parents. So we were just always together, like dinners, family functions, holidays. We were together a lot. And then they moved into our neighborhood. So we really saw each other a lot.
All around, all the time, man.
Yeah,
Okay,
so-
But you hit on a point though that I wanted to. It was intentional that so growing up in Northern Virginia, or raising our kids in Northern Virginia. Great place, great schools. When we had a choice to pick, we were moving from Denver, it was Maryland or whatever, and we intentionally moved there for school system purposes, right? But there was far and few people of color. So it was easy to navigate. One, the boys connected us with friends. And so those families became our extended family and became a bigger, like Sunday dinners were the thing. So, yeah. And so to make sure there was still, like you migrate toward people like you, had no problem in them being in a diverse environment,
Right.
but also wanted them to be able to understand what it meant to be amongst our people, our community,
Yeah.
right? So,
Yeah.
Curating your own community, which we talk about all the time. Being
All
able
the
to
time.
being that in itself, I think, is part of managing your mental health as well. Just being able to be around individuals that you know are going to be able to support not only you, but your extended family that's there during that time. It's important to manage that so that your mental health is solid, at least with having individuals in your life and other people's and your kids' lives that are going to be able to pour into them and keep them safe. So I felt we had that same kind of curated. Matter of fact, my parents still are really close friends with a lot of the people that they created. So
Mhm.
I get that. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
What does self-care mean to you? And just a
Self-care has
mom.
changed a lot for me,
Mm,
and probably the last 2 years for sure. And I say the last 2 years, COVID was hard.
mm,
It is still obviously COVID, but the initial state of it, I went into panic mode. I suffer from anxiety and depression. And
mm,
probably the week after, I just, like, when we got secluded,
mhm,
it
Mm.
was, it's gonna be like I'm not used to not being forward and being able to engage and see people.
yeah.
And it just felt so daunting. Like, so I was having a panic attack.
Mm.
Um, I will say to move from that though, my boys rallied around and they're like, and my husband, I say my boys, rallied around to go, okay, we got to move you from this.
Yeah.
What is this? I sought care early on. There was no care I called my primary. I couldn't even get a call back within the week.
Mm,
And I called back at the end of the week. I'm like, I'm not in a good space. I need to talk to somebody. So we did a phase care. I'm only saying that to go outside of care not being readily available.
Yeah.
Generally it was even worse during COVID.
Of course. Yeah.
Self-care though that was my starting journey, and I call it my journey. A transition was the youngest, the wise one, I call him. Chris, Reggie were there, Kevin were there, like whatever you need, supportive in that way. And Cam is just straight up like, where are your tools? And I'm like, dang, did that come back to us now that you're using the word tools? And he's like, what are your tools? And those tools became me getting outside. We were then open to go outside, right? Those tools were me starting to work out. So that became a necessary. Those were things that were helping me move my moods and emotions. So self-care to me was then I started, and you'll see me and the things I was posting is finding my peace. So it was, where is that? I need to be where that is. And I
Right.
also had to look at care of what I was having around me or who I was having around me to go, I can't go with that. That's too much negative, or that's too much whatever. I need to. So it was about the care was really for the first time me looking into go, what brings me peace, what brings me calm, and doing those things. The other things like massage and stuff that I used to do that was a luxury, that is now a necessity. It's not even a question. It is part of my monthly kind of, I needed to soothe my body and my emotions and stuff. But yeah, so it looks different. Self-care looks different today than I grew up. Self-care to me was a luxury. Then I'm always and love
Wow.
the part of me that takes care of other people. I didn't know how to take care of me. I didn't even begin to know what that
That's major.
looked like
Yeah.
until I had to.
Right.
And that had to was kind of surviving, again, COVID from a mental state of mind. And then now definitely in trying to move this place of grief. Look different.
Where would you say you are in your mental health journey right now?
I am cognizant. I'm aware of my emotions and feel I am moving. I am working through it more so than I've ever had to in the past. In terms of, I have a therapist. I've had two at one point of recent. It's hard to say. I know I'm tinkering, depending on the day. I've been in the depressive mode.
Yeah.
Anxiety is just like a normal thing that I'm having to manage every day, right? The grief portion adds just a whole nother layer because there's so many facets to it. And I guess the one thing I take away from that is my therapist reminds me you're on a journey there to no destination, and that grief is not linear. So one day, I might look, people are going, you look great. And I don't feel that way.
Right.
I'm not right there at the edge of where I've been. It's right there. So I'm cognizant of my emotions and my feelings and understanding where they're stemming from, but understand more than ever that self-care is important and that I follow through on this journey of working with someone to help guide me right now.
What would you say are some coping mechanisms that helped you to this point in your journey? I know that you talked about, working out and getting outside, but are there some like additional things that are
breathing? And I don't even, that word is so different now.
Yeah. I know what you mean.
You mean like breath work?
Yeah.
Breath work.
Yeah.
Breath work to understand I can help move some energies. I can help move my emotions. And it's meant more than anything for me to kind of, my husband go, why is that big sigh? I'm like, it is actually, I've learned it's the body's way of exerting negative and pushing out. So I'm appreciative of that. But breath work has been amazing. Mindfulness, where I used to be like, I can't do this. Again, that came about last year with I have a good friend that goes, I want you to try this meditation, mindfulness, understanding I can't do yoga because I can't sit still because my mind races. But I learned better. The whole yoga is another piece, but the mindfulness, the breathing, and just being able to make space and go at a pace that flows and not just gets, I allow myself space to feel what I'm going to feel, whatever space I'm in. If that means taking a moment to kind of regroup, yes. And the takeaway that I tell my psychologist will ever stay with me is I have to ask myself, what do I need right now? What do you need right now?
Right.
Is that a constant question you ask yourself, or is it like
these days,
when you're
yes.
feeling like more emotionally charged?
Probably more when I'm feeling more emotionally charged, but on a day to day, because again, I had fewer days where I wake up and go, great, you good. More days of, wow, okay, here you are again. What you gonna do? I'm mindful. I'm prayerful. I'm in those states. I've had finding myself more in that needing to be mindful and needing to give myself that space and needing to not just go. Gotta go with the flow that my space is in, where I'm at.
So you mentioned having to go. And I'm, even as someone myself who struggles with self-care and prioritizing that, have there ever been times where you've fallen off of your self-care routine? And if so, how do you get back into the groove of it?
Definitely fallen off. Again, I will defer to my psychologist because she's my anchor, as well as my family, to be able to talk to go. I fell into, I'm just going to refer to it was probably a couple months ago that I fell into this horrible sorrow, sadness and anger. And, my psychologist said, so what are you doing? Are you still using your processing tools? Nope.
Right.
I can't give myself, boxing has been coming out. You boxing? Nope. You walking? Nope. Journaling? Nope. You reading? No, I'm not doing anything. I'm just here. And I hate being here. But consistently, I would challenge myself. You can't stay here. I would have people tell me, it's okay. You're going to feel that. But I knew I couldn't stay here. This is not where I wanted to be. I said it early on in our grief. If there's the five of us said it to each other, if you see one of us staying too long, and I knew it. I just had to talk myself to get it together. Like, it's okay to feel this, but you got to move from this.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, give yourself grace to feel that for a little bit.
A lot of grace. I've never done that for my life to give myself. I've given myself grace to kind of move through this. I don't know how else, because when I entered this, my psychologist asked, well, like, what is it that you want out of this? And it's like to process this in the most healthiest manner that I can. And so part of getting to that healthy point is the pain point.
Yeah.
Is facing those pain points.
And I kind of have a follow-up question to that. In terms of like when you find yourself falling off of your self-care routine, does it feel gradual? Does it feel abrupt? Is it just like...
I feel like I fell totally off that. I feel, well, in that particular wave, I'll call it, I could see it coming. But there was nothing, I guess I was going to go there inevitably. But I found myself just staying there, or to the points in which what was coming out is this anger and sadness. I'm like, how do you have those two as a mix? And when your husband's going, okay, I need you to call Dr. Ford, or even me going, I need her now. Like, but I try not to get stuck with just relying on her either as a crutch.
Right.
So it's going, what is it that you, again, if I haven't said this already, she would ask, what do you need then?
Yeah.
I would have to start going back to that to go, okay, what do you need today? What is it? I know what it is that's causing this,
Right.
but what is it that you need that's going to help you in that moment, or the space that I was in?
So if I'm hearing correctly, it sounds like you're fully aware of what is happening with you, but the tools necessary to combat what is occurring was the things that you were having to build on.
I was having to build on.
Yeah, because there's never
And that's
been
what
anything.
I'm encouraging. Coming out of Mind and Wellness when we talk about it is I want people to have tools. If you don't have tools, I'm not sure how you. Again, I've suffered from anxiety and depression a long time. I've had traumatic things. We'll get to that as understanding. I don't want young people to get to 58 years old and have to go, oh, all this pain from the past and traumas on top of trauma, never treated. Not okay. So I'm dealing with this. I think last year, if I can look at the portion when I was going through trying to overcome and get myself together, working through COVID, oddly enough, I can look back now and go, one would say that's not the preparation for that, but it was preparation for what I was going to have to pay.
Yeah.
With using those tools.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've just been thinking about, you use the word tools often. I actually have a couple questions, but you use the word tools often. And I know that tools could be different for other,
Right.
You mentioned journaling. What have been some of the tools for our listeners that you have found helpful that other people could potentially use if they don't have anywhere to start?
What gives you peace?
Okay.
What gives you peace? What allows you to? So I talk a lot about it. For my family, they don't necessarily, I'm able to talk about Chris's death. It's necessary for me to talk about Chris's death. That is seemingly a tool to be able to use your voice then in that respect, right? For Cam, getting ready to say, music has always been a thing for him. Music has been, and now he's developing art. He's an actual artist, a different kind of artist. But he was doing this before Chris passed, but an author. So he's fine. These are things he's been for. For Kevin, it has been working out. But then for Kevin, it's finding, he's got to find other tools. So those are tools. It's like, what gives you peace? What allows you to process?
Okay.
So definitely not the same for everyone, for sure.
Okay. So my other question is, you've also mentioned about your support group being the kings in your life, your husband, your sons. Do you have any support system in your friends group? Is it okay for people to ask how your journey with mental health is going? And then what is the line?
Yep. I'll start with the mental health piece of it it is separate somewhat of the grief and where I'm at in that.
Sure.
I didn't have for so long knowing that I think it was after I was diagnosed with acute depression and anxiety. I didn't feel like I had anybody that I could tell that for concern about judgment, concern about crazy. Yeah.
Right.
Isolation of that. I have one good friend and she's been there. I don't even know how it came up. When I started being able to, I guess there was a point in which she and I were talking about it and I was like, I have this, I suffer from this. And then it was, girl, me too. It was comfortable then for her to be able to say that. And we don't have to talk about it a lot now, but we always check in. Yeah. And it's like, where's your headspace? Where you at? How are you today? So it felt so good finally to be able to have someone to share that with. Not that misery creates company thing, but someone that I could talk to. And at some point over the years, I've allowed myself to be able to say, this is what I'm experiencing. And not always, but in other groups that go, someone would say, thank you. This is what I'm sharing. I've been scared to say something about it. So in social groups and in, it's not a workplace conversation, but I've had casual conversations with different friends, and it's been that way to say in our environment, in events and production, it's a high stress level in it. You find a lot of mental health issues or disorders. Yep. Is it okay for somebody to ask me out? Absolutely. And I'll share my story, and it may be different from yours. It may be similar, it may be parallel. Like, I may not have what you have. I think I definitely hope the doctor helps kind of clear what is mental illness and what are disorders. And some people may just be in a situational kind of thing, experience some trauma. Somebody may have just had a life situation that has just caused anxiety for that. Like there's not always a label, not right. But being able to identify what you're experiencing when you're seeing things over and over and situations happen to you. I think that's important. And again, you guys can talk that through with the doctor. But yeah, people can ask me about, I'm in a great space in my life and space to go, yeah, and let's talk about it. In terms of the grief, it's funny, we talk about it. It's like, and this is natural and this would come. Everybody was there in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And so far and few, and I won't say there, many aren't comfortable asking us. We're talking about it. And I get that. But many people aren't comfortable. But it's okay. I prefer either you not ask how we're doing, just don't even, or ask and be okay that you made what I'm finding is people aren't comfortable anymore. And they weren't comfortable even before this. I said this, and asking and they get a response. If I'm good, they're great.
Right.
If I say today's not a good day or I'm not doing good, I don't know how to respond to that.
Right.
But I think that's general. I used to say this of when people ask you how you're doing today, you shouldn't ask people how they're doing today if you're not prepared to get the response.
Exactly.
That's been a recurring theme.
That is my thing with asking us about grief. I've been in rooms with spaces that I left uncomfortable and mad that you kind of skirted around it and you asked us everything else, but how are you doing? And it's okay. Like, and I get on people's discomfort. And I'm not, begrudging anyone, but it is hard sometimes to not have someone, I'm not, oh, woe is we, but what our experience is, where we're at, just how you doing? You guys good? I'd rather that than nothing.
What is the response you would like to hear? Like when sharing that, like what's something that
in terms of how we're doing?
Yeah.
What the response from other people?
Yeah. Like once you share that, like today is not a good day. Like I think, you said that people don't know how to respond. Like what is the appropriate response? Or like
script people, but it is just, don't try to, it'll be, don't come with, you're going to get over it.
Yeah.
Or
right.
It's just acknowledge,
I'm so sorry you're going through this.
Yeah. Or, I don't know what descriptive, but don't just leave me hanging like, well, because I've gotten that. Yeah. I'd rather you say, dang, that's tough, or yeah, that sucks, or whatever. Just acknowledge you heard me.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to fix us. We can't be, it's going to take a while to fix us. Just, that's all.
Well, we've touched on a little bit of the reasoning behind you and the motivation behind starting the Mind and Wellness Foundation.
Mm-hmm.
So would you like to tell us how you got here, what the motivation was?
Yeah. So totally, I would say I wouldn't be here had Chris not taken his life. Just call it what it is. He is the inspiration behind Mind and Wellness. Carol, you know this. I think at some point you were helping me with a bunch of different things, but his diagnosis prior to his death was acute depression and PTSD. Some would ask, was he in the service? No, he wasn't in the service, and PTSD is not limited to the service. I now am suffering because I found him with PTSD. He thought he had something not more significant, different than that. Long story short, by the time I guess it got to be where Chris was not able, and he was seeing signs even in his self that weren't normal, that he sought to get help, which was early 2021. COVID was hard on him as well. So that layered on top of that. I don't know what else he was going through because I wasn't sitting in his space. He talked more openly with us, and probably even more with me, because at the time of his death, he was living in LA and he was living with me. So we as a family, we talked those open conversations. We have family calls every Sunday. We had a family call before the Monday of his death. Like we talked openly, shooting the shit, They were debating and arguing, whatever the case may be. That was a norm for us. But the foundation ends in part, in whole, inspired by him, inspired by what he was going through and experiencing. And they used some of the steps, what we want to be able to get to. We were blessed with gifts of people pouring into us. We were like, okay, we didn't really want donations and such. And then we decided, impressed upon one of his good friends, to go, please take this, because people are asking what to do. So we did do a GoFundMe, but the intent was, we'll defray a couple of costs here and there, but more importantly, that we'll give back to somebody else that needs it. Somebody else needs to be able to get the help they need. Chris got the help he needed, but he was struggling coming out of pocket. So that was, we'll talk about one of the barriers that we don't want there to be a barrier to people to get help, young people. And I say young people, that 18 to 35, kind of the sweet spot is where we're seeing more deaths occur in our community and culture. So Black and brown young men are not being able to get the help they need. That's been one deterrent. So that's one of our pillars, to make sure we get funds to people that need to get therapy. So we're providing grants for that. The other piece of the foundation is removing the stigma. You went back and you asked about, did we talk about it in our home? Absolutely not. It was not discussed in Black homes by and large. Black people don't have mental illness. We just
have that cousin we know.
Right.
Can't be around.
Right.
Right.
So I want to be able to have conversations, start breaking the stigma behind what is mental health. So understanding mental health and mental illness, because we respond that way as people because we don't know and we don't understand. Right. And so we don't talk about it. And we can't intelligently talk about it because we don't know, right? So let's just start being able to break the stigma about mental health. Everybody's not crazy. There's varying degrees of mental health, and there's varying types of mental health disorders and illnesses. So we're going to work with advocates and people in the mental health space, be it academia or practicing literacy, to help bring those messages and awareness and content. But beyond having the information, it's what do we do with it? So ours is just like, let's start taking action behind that. What can we do to start allowing our people within our community, again, young, Black, brown, people of color, to be able to speak about it? And then what do we do to help move on it? How do we start getting ourselves teed up to be intelligently being able to respond or to have these conversations?
You all also made a very deliberate decision to be honest about Chris's death. Why did you decide to do that? Because I know a lot of people probably would have been like, "Oh, he passed away," but no details. But you were very transparent.
My husband and I talked about it in a way because I was reading about it. I was just reading about the studies behind. There's more Black people and people of color that commit suicide than not, and the coroners even, they don't have enough information about us. It's not disclosed. There's a disparity in death. Like, we are also excluded in death with information. But I asked my husband, and I've asked this before, I found it because people are going, you guys have been very transparent. Thank you for being. I was like, what else could we be? What am I going to say? Chris just died and there's no other, but people are going to ask questions. It never was a question for us.
Yeah.
It really wasn't ever. It was probably harder for us to say, but it was never, he took his life. I don't know how else I would have. So it seemed very odd to me. I literally was talking to Mr. Vaughn about it on the way here to go, what else would we say? How was that so not acceptable? And but then I read other stuff and people saying because of the judgment that's posed upon the shame.
Yeah.
I am not ashamed of my Black, brown, beautiful, smart, dynamic young men. He had an illness, and it's an illness. This is the other piece of mind and wellness, to understand the connectivity. My head's not separated from my body.
Right.
It's interconnected.
All trauma is felt everywhere.
It's felt everywhere. I feel it. I felt it before, but more so than ever as I'm going through, I was describing to people going like, I am in physical. I've been in the point I'm in today in physical pain because of the trauma. We'll talk about the nutritional point. We wanted to take all aspects to go, not just about the mental health, but what can we do even before the self-care? What are we doing with ourselves when we talk about what we eat? There are sugars that we know that share mood, that causes mood disorders. Just like that whole, I wish, and that in schools, they would have taught us better when we're talking about health and why nutrition was so important, to understand nutrition is important, not just for our physical, but it is definitely impactful to your mental. So, and we're within Mind and Wellness, we're talking about the whole person, and just like, you can come there for mental health kind of resources, tools, tips, information, but I want us to be able to walk away and take away to go, oh, I didn't think about when I eat this, that this is how I, or how it could impact my body. So just looking at it holistically,
Right.
for sure.
Is there a void that you felt was missing in the mental health space that you're trying to fill with this?
That's a big hole.
Okay.
And there's multi-layers to the mental health thing. You know, I was talking to somebody about advocacy and like, you don't speak up about it too. It's on I was filling out a DMV application yesterday to get my renewal, whatever you call it, card. And it asks you that mental health. Do you suffer from mental health disorder? I know I've seen it before. But people, that's it's not even a void. It's this needs to be addressed. Why are you asking me this?
Yeah. And if I check yes, what does that mean?
What does that mean? Not that there's a void. There's not a space for me to go. I'm not okay. But again, there's varying degrees of mental disorders.
Yeah.
So there's not one that's applicable to this. What are you trying to see? Does it affect my job? Does it affect me driving? Why are you asking me this? Right. And how are you using this information?
Right.
Exactly.
A void in being, big void in terms of accessibility to care. Okay. So we talk about accessibility to care because insurance coverages, again, I've had sort of for a while to go, it only covers 8 sessions.
Yeah.
How do you know if it's going to take me 8 sessions to get through this? Or that your insurance doesn't even offer it anymore. More than not, of recent insurances don't cover mental health care or behavioral, whatever you want to call it, behavioral science care. That's a void to me. And it's great I have insurance, I can get to it. It still costs me a grip to have a care provider myself. I think it's a void for young people. I think it's more for where you're at, access, understanding where to go to get that help.
Right.
So the communication, accessibility of it. And then I think it just, again, that barrier of cost makes it prohibitive for people to get the help to go, I can't afford that. I can't. I'm going to eat this week or I'm going to get care. And obviously eating is paramount. However, long-term impact of not getting that care is, could be a deal breaker.
For sure. So how can those that are interested in supporting the foundation or utilizing the services of the foundation find the help that they're looking for or support?
So go to the website for sure. We'll start there. I think we go to the website. It's mindandwellnessfoundation.org. We're on Instagram at Mind and Wellness, the Mind and Wellness Foundation on Facebook, and then Mind and Wellness _Foundation on IG. Starting points, we're new. Like this is 3 months. We're building. We have great resources, but then there's some that I can't find it. So help share that it's there. Help share why it's there. I think the grant pieces, we're really we want people to know it's there for accessibility and it's confidential. There's an application process for sure. It's a short application process. You need to either have a provider you're connected with. If you don't have a provider, obviously, we're building a database and we're leveraging use of our other colleagues in the space because we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We just need to tighten the network.
Right.
And so there are doctors, therapists, professionals in that network we're building. And I talk about, I'm a mother of 3 Black kings, but we're looking at people of color. There's one resource and accessibility for Latinos, for Asian American, trying to get into that Native American space and trying to leverage this. So we're talking about the blanket of people of color. There is also, this is not limiting to just people of color though. Again, our environment is diverse. Our friends are our Caucasian brothers and sisters, right? So there's accessibility through the norms, but for us, culturally competent accessibility, access to culturally competent therapists and stuff. And that environment is on the website. So I want people to know, come there. In an emergency though, and it says it right off the bat though, we're not the people to come to if you're in crisis.
Right.
If you're in crisis mode, I need you to call that 988 or I need you to call, the national help number if you're in crisis.
Well, thank you for coming and sharing with
Thank
us.
you.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
you
This
guys.
story
Yeah.
is so necessary. I'm so thankful that you wanted to share it with us.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Me
guys.
too.
And minimal tears. So I appreciate it.
Thank
We
you.
did it.
And today, guys, surprise, surprise, we have a sponsor.
Hey-o.
Hey.
About time. I'm ready
on,
for this.
sponsor.
Our sponsor for today is Naovi. They are Novell applications of vital information. So we just want to say thank you to our sponsor for allowing us to have our first of all, and secondly, to be able to say that we have somebody supporting what we're doing. We appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. So we have another special guest with us here. It is
Hey.
LaTasha Pennant. She is a licensed clinical and professional counselor. Her business is called Building Blocks Counseling and Wellness in Maryland. And the services that she provides are life transitions, counseling services for life transitions, anxiety, depression and stress, trauma and attachment, relationship discord, and inner critic and low self-esteem. Wow, I feel like I suffer from all of these, so maybe
Wow.
I should be calling you.
Yes.
Right. Do you service the whole DMV? Like all of it? Or just Maryland?
Just Maryland for
Oh,
now.
Lord.
You have openings.
I'm not trying to relocate.
Well, thank you for being here with us today.
Yeah.
We want to play a quick game with you. It's called This or That.
Okay.
So I have 10 quick questions for you. Toilet paper, over or under?
Over.
Touch or taste?
Ooh.
This is not a loaded question.
Depends on the
Like
topic.
my senses are working, so I'm like touchy taste.
Touch or taste? So both of them.
I like both of them.
Okay. Permission or forgiveness?
Permission.
Oh.
Okay.
I feel like as a therapist, that tracks.
That tracks. For you, it also tracks that you thought it was
I was
sad.
like, why are you sounding sad over there?
I'm going to do what I want.
I literally have a shirt that says I don't ask permission.
Okay.
Sounds right.
Fair.
I'm done.
Sounds
You can
dangerous.
only watch your favorite movie every night for a year or never watch the same movie twice.
Never watch the same movie twice.
I can get with that.
Your teacher read your text messages aloud or your teacher tells the whole class your grade.
The teacher tells the class my grade.
Same sis.
Because it's going to be an A anyway. So you can tell whatever you need to say. Okay.
No text messages though.
Don't read
Yeah.
that.
Free travel for 1 year or free lodging for 5 years.
Free travel for a year.
Okay.
Mm.
See the future or change the past.
Ooh.
Change the past.
Oh,
Oh,
interesting.
wow.
Okay, we're gonna dive into that.
Yeah, I want to.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, can we really quickly? Because as a counselor, I would assume that you would say not change the past because of maybe accepting where you are currently. Like, why did you say
Yeah.
change the past?
Oh, so that is such a loaded question for me. Fannie Lou Hamer is one of my spirit guides. And so for me to see the past and to change the past definitely shapes the future.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So if I
yeah.
could only see the future but not have any imprint on how it impacts, people,
Yeah.
it
That's
doesn't
nice.
feel as empowering.
Okay.
And
Right.
also from a mental health perspective, part of what I help clients bring into realization is like what they experienced from the past, because that truly impacts like how we navigate and how we move forward in life.
Right.
So past is very powerful.
Oh,
so
okay.
yeah.
Mm.
I like
That was
that.
good.
Okay.
This wasn't
that
part of the
was a
game, but I
word.
like that.
Right, that was a word. The past is powerful.
Okay. Would you rather talk like Yoda or breathe like Darth Vader for the rest of your life?
So smokers.
I'm gonna go with breathe like Darth Vader. Maybe there's some meditation or something in there that I can,
with some breath work, yes.
I'm with that.
All right.
Okay. Smartest person in the world or richest person in the world?
Smartest.
Mhm.
That's a toughie
Better
for
than
me.
If you're smart, you can get rich.
Because I
Oh,
can be the
that's
second
true.
richest,
I
right?
say.
Wow, you're right.
If you rich, you gotta hire smart people.
Back.
Yeah, but
Round
you
of
can't
applause.
trust. You can't trust
you have a lot of
everybody.
money, and that money be gone because
Right.
you weren't smart enough to recognize
Maintain it.
when you were getting ripped
How
off.
did I get it?
That's another loaded question there. Okay, very last one. Would you rather have 10,000 spoons when all you need is a knife or always have a knife but never be able to use a spoon?
I can get down with a knife.
Yeah,
What
I'm
about
a
you?
minimalist, so the idea of having all that baggage and give me one thing, I'll make it work.
Okay.
You should be
Fingers,
Nicole's
right?
spirit animal because you like knives.
Yeah, I know.
Just
Just
saying.
like I keep one on me all the time.
Stay ready so you don't have to get ready.
But dang, now I'm like, dang, I really want a spoon. And I'll never have a spoon. But if you guess you don't know a
You
spoon,
can still scoop things with a knife if you need to, but you
how
can't.
you gonna eat soup?
You drink
You
it.
slurp it.
Just pick
You
up
don't
the
need a
bowl.
utensil for
Yeah.
it. But how are you gonna cut things if all you got are
Oh,
spoons?
bougie self. See?
I don't know,
How
pull it
you
apart.
gonna protect yourself?
Okay, well, I was thinking about, I thought eating, not like self-defense.
Can I ask a question?
Multifaceted.
What?
When you asked the Yoda and Darth Vader thing, in my mind, I'm like, what if she had a voice like Chewbacca instead?
Sorry.
All right. Maybe we should bring it back to our actual topic at hand. Thank you for playing our game with us.
Would it be us if we didn't, Tangent?
It wouldn't.
No.
I enjoyed it. Thank you for that. Appreciate
yeah.
the
That's
What
laughter.
thing we gonna do?
Laughter is healing.
Yes. Had to break the ice a little bit.
Oh,
Yeah.
goodness. Okay. All right. So back on track. I have a question, obviously. What inspired you to become a therapist and how did you get into this field?
Ooh, so, I like to say I'm a jack of all trades. I used to say master of none, and now I say master of being busy. So,
Okay.
so I actually spent 20 years in the Coast Guard, retired from the Coast Guard.
Oh, wow.
Post my time in the Coast Guard, that's when I had an opportunity to kind of explore, like, okay, what's next? And I see, like, these beautiful natural hairs. And so I used to be a sister law consultant.
Oh, okay.
And so
Oh.
during that experience, I had an opportunity to like really connect.
Mm.
And I've always just kind of like innately been a nurturer. So, just conversating with individuals, I kind of felt like, okay, this feels good.
Okay.
Mhm.
I have 2 daughters, so I was a Girl Scout leader. So I was always in that helping capacity, kind of serving. And so I was like, okay, school counseling, kids, school counseling. Went into the school building. I was like, nah. Not quite that.
Not
But
for me.
I think I'm
Not
close.
for
I
me.
think
Tell
I'm
you about them
close.
children.
I think I'm close. It wasn't
Not
the
for all.
kids. It wasn't the kids. It was the grown people,
Right?
right?
Piggybacking on your song of the
Okay.
week.
Priority stress for you.
I love them.
The kids are great. It's the grown people. And so after, 20 years in the military, you learn how to be what you need to be in the moment. And so getting out of the Coast Guard is like, okay, I'm a free spirit here. I say a lot of things that, the hierarchy doesn't quite appreciate.
Mm.
So I knew like that structure wasn't quite for me.
Okay.
And so I was like, you know what? But I still love helping people. And so just opening up my own practice and being able to practice in a way. And I saw this in the school, like, decolonizing, like how we show up as mental health professionals. That's really what allowed me to go
Okay.
in as the practitioner that I'm becoming.
Okay.
And so
Can you unpack what that means?
decolonizing.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So,
Yeah.
so if you say it, you'll probably
Mhm.
feel into like what that means, right?
Mhm.
Because part of like how we show up as individuals, it is because how we've been reared. We live in a society where, something happened on this land before we even arrived. And so, when we talk about the past, right, the past literally comes forward and lives through
Mhm.
us. And so decolonizing is an opportunity to kind of reclaim, what was lost, what was kind of muddied up, and, what was disconnected from, people. And so it just gives me the opportunity to, move away from the textbook style where it says like, you know what, let's just talk about like what happened, right? And let's only talk about it for 40 minutes.
Mm.
But we are like storytellers as people. So the medical model doesn't always
yeah.
work,
That's real.
so just having that flexibility to really practice in a way that aligns with, the essence of really like who people are and the people I serve. I typically serve, BIPOC individuals, Black,
Mhm.
Indigenous, people of color, marginalized people. So just being able to allow them to show up in a space that doesn't judge, that accepts, that doesn't put them in a box, that's the first start to decolonizing it, because you can authentically be like who you are,
Mm.
and it's absolutely well.
I love that.
So is there a separate, because a friend of mine, she actually stopped, she was in school to be a social security worker and a therapist. She stopped going because same thing you said, she felt like she was too boxed in to help because I guess of the certain things and procedures that I guess doctors have to go through. So do you have like a separate type of, like, what did you do to get to your practice so it's not so boxed in?
Yeah. So, the academic structure is the academic structure, right? You kind of have to walk that path in order to get the document that says now you can move forward and you can practice in this way. But there are so many different ways to help people heal outside of this path that we're talking about, which requires licensure. But for me, like, I did have to go through that process, and I didn't know what I didn't know. It wasn't until I started serving the community that I realized that the tools that I was given were not necessarily applicable to the people that I was trying to serve.
Mm-hmm.
And so once you kind of break outside of that space, then you start to see like, oh, wow, there are other blueprints. Like, our ancestors left us with, evidence and trails that show us like how we heal ourselves, how we heal as community, how we heal nature within nature in the world. So these models have always existed. And so part of the process of decolonizing is to say that all those processes, all those practices that were taboo, that were, considered less than, like, they are acceptable and they're welcome and they're effective.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really just kind of, allowing myself to, have permission to explore what was really already there, but wasn't necessarily presented to me in a textbook.
Right.
It
Yeah.
was never meant to be in a textbook.
Right. Yeah.
Ooh, that was hard.
Word of mouth.
Yeah.
Family, interfamily situations versus
It's,
a textbook.
it's that human to human
Right.
exchange.
Mhm.
It's
Has
like,
to be.
braiding, right? We don't always go to school to learn how to braid. Some
Right.
do, but for the most part, like, that's something that just gets in your
Passed down.
bones and
Mm-hmm.
you know how to do it.
Well, for some of us.
I missed that black girl class, and I'm
literally
really
like-
sorry about
Listen,
it.
sis,
Sis, you're not
classes.
alone.
I don't know how to do that either.
That wasn't one. Like, you have somebody in the community. My girls always sat in between somebody else's legs
Okay.
because
Yeah.
my hands didn't quite work that way.
Yeah.
But the point
got
is
it.
that somebody in
Yes.
the community knew
Knew
how to
what to
do
do.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
provide the service that you need.
Yes,
And so,
Tiffany.
yeah.
Yes.
It wasn't shade. I still
like
can't
it.
cornrow. You're not
That's fine.
alone.
Look,
Sorry, hit a nerve.
as many presses as I've given,
I
I
was
don't know
saying-
how to cornrow. I barely know how to plait. Like
I'm
it's
determined
sus.
to learn.
Well,
And I mentioned before I was a sister lock consultant.
Yeah,
And
that's what does that mean?
So I did sister locks, like literally locks. And I'm sitting here saying like I'm not a hair person, and I'm really not. But it was kind of like knitting. So it even shows that people who don't have like the natural capacity to do something are capable of learning. And that's essentially what I did.
That's a
I
message.
put in the work and I was able to do it. And I had family members calling, like, somebody's going to pay you to touch their hair. Like, that's really like
I would pay for
how
that.
much it was known. Like that was not my trait.
Mhm.
And then practice, learned, and I became really good at it.
right.
But that just kind of shows like the power of, putting your mind to something and then just allowing yourself to kind of be immersed with the right people who are going to support and nurture like you being able to come into that gift.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll jump right into it. How do you define mental health?
So there's so many things that fall like under mental health.
Yeah.
And so sometimes people say like mental health, mental wellness, mental disorders. So for me, mental health is really just like the fitness in which we show up. And we all have like, mental health. Just like we have physical health that comes with like certain abilities, our mental health is just really like, how are we able to show up? And we have the ability to strengthen our mental health. You can kind of recognize like, okay, the areas in which you struggle, but then there's also the ability to bring awareness around, how can I strengthen? So every person has mental health. And it's just a matter of, what's going on with your mental health, if you will.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you touched on mental illness and mental disorder. What's the differentiation between those two things?
Yeah, some of it has to do with like the medical model. So, when you're working with like insurance companies, diagnosing is like a must. You can't get around it, and that's kind of like the process also of decolonizing therapy is not having to give people like a diagnosis. So when we say a mental health disorder, it's usually going to be connected with what we refer to as the DSM. And that's where we get the diagnosis for identifying, what particular, illness a person may have and what those symptoms are. So the illness and the diagnosis, along with the disorder, can be grouped together, but in some ways they're also separate. So you can have a mental disorder in the sense that, it could be something that you're born with, right? neurological. But it could also be something that's environmental. And we don't often talk about environmental, like racial mental health and how it impacts people. But it's so layered, just as with anything. But the terms that we use are very much connected to like how you're talking about that particular. I guess, or how you're speaking to that situation, whether you're trying to diagnose or if you're just trying to identify, what a particular problem might be and how it's impacting.
Got you. You very naturally flowed into my next question, which was asking about like the differences between having like a chemical imbalance and what falls in under those lines versus what may be like a situational event that incurs some sort of mental, I don't want to misuse illness or disorder, but whatever, like if a crisis is happening, if it is steeped in just how your brain operates versus if something happened and it impacted you and kind of created the situation.
So that question is very layered, and
that's why I had a hard time asking it.
Right, and it just really speaks to just how complex we are as beings and how things impact us. And so part of what my mind hears in that question is when someone has what we might consider a traumatic experience, right? And they're responding to that versus when you say someone has a chemical imbalance. And when I think about chemical imbalance, I tend to think about something very different from perhaps what you might be referring to, because when people think about a person maybe who has bipolar, schizophrenia, oftentimes they think, oh, there's some imbalance in the body, a chemical imbalance. And it's really not a chemical imbalance. It's something different that's going on. It's not like, my hormones, right? Where, you genuinely can have as a result of having too much estrogen or, progesterone, like it can impact you depending like on your gender. But not so much when we talk about like mental health in that way. It's not just it's really more biological in terms of what's happening, within that person's body. And oftentimes, I think because there's not an appreciation to what's happening internally when someone is having like a mental health crisis, people often think, but there are certain things that they can do to kind of tame it, right? Because if there's a chemical imbalance, okay, we'll give something to counter it, right? It should go away. Well, it's not always that simple, because it's not just that quote unquote imbalance. And then part of it also is like who defines an imbalance, right? When you talk to people who have, personality disorders, bipolar, schizophrenia, for them, they feel very normal. We see them as being abnormal. So therefore, we want to kind of put them in this spot, right? Same with individuals who might be on the spectrum. Like they feel that they are normal. We see them as being, unnormal, not normal, if you will, because they don't typically follow like the normal mode and way of being. And same way when you go back to classroom, right? There is this perception of how students should sit and how students should behave in a classroom. And when a student has a little bit more energy, oh, that student has ADHD. Oh, that student has behavior issues. And so I think being able to fully understand the human experience is one that requires that we show up with empathy, compassion, and an openness to everyone's uniqueness. Because if we try to see people through like a box, right, we're going to try to put them in something, and sometimes like that's going to create that agitation. That's going to create like this person wanting to like get out, and what looks like a person who's being combative is really a person who's saying like, no, I don't like this, box that you're putting me in. And so, I can appreciate the question that's being asked. I certainly can. But I think it's definitely much more layered than just, a chemical imbalance.
Yeah, so because that term implies that something's wrong with them, I guess, is when you say there's an imbalance, you're saying something's wrong, but we're only saying they're wrong based on what's been taught is not normal. Is that what you're saying?
So I guess too, when I hear chemical imbalance, I think this is also part of my own trigger. I think within the medical community, if you're starting to hear more about like, medical marijuana and, other, medicinal aids, right? To me, it kind of feeds into that idea. If we just give people more medication, then somehow, again, they're going to return to what looks like normalcy. Within like the population of individuals being on Medicaid, which is typically underserved communities, you have a lot of children who are in foster care who are overly medicated because someone said there is a chemical imbalance. And it's not just a chemical imbalance. We're talking about trauma. We're talking about lived experience. We're talking about environmental factors that truly impact how a person shows up. And so I guess for me, and I'm going to own that. When I hear that chemical imbalance, to me, it feels like it gives
Like an
Western,
overreach.
practitioners, a green light again to go ahead and move forward with saying, like, this is why this is so great for us to continue to prescribe. It takes us right back to that, control factor, but using like medication, but pharma is connected to,
Right.
something that's totally different, and it moves away from, has the ability to help. And I'm not suggesting that there are not times, there are absolutely times where medication is warranted. But with the people that I typically work with, marginalized communities, children in foster care, they're typically over-medicated because someone has deemed their behaviors can be controlled with medication because of perceived like imbalance.
So what can cause a mental health crisis?
Just getting up. You ever had one of
Well,
those mornings?
okay.
Yes.
Well,
Right? I mean, that's the reality, right?
Crises then. Okay.
I have this saying that say life is hard because life is hard.
Yeah.
And sometimes we just don't know like when we're going to experience like that toughness of life. You can just, and sometimes people come like, I was in the shower and I started crying and I didn't even know why, because life was happening. And so the body was saying there's something here. There's something that's happening. There's a story to be told. There's an experience to be witnessed. There's some awareness that needs to come forward.
Right.
So really like the simple things in life, can cause us to experience distress. And we may not even realize that the things that in the environments we're in are impacting our bodies.
Right.
And when we talk about like vicarious trauma, that's also very real. I'm looking around the room and I'm looking at the makeup, and I'm imagining that many of us are very careful about what we watch on the news, what we scroll through and what we see on social media, being very attentive to not come across those articles that talk about fill in the blank.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's showing that even though we are making efforts to avoid, that's because it's connected to a narrative that's in our body. And so when you wake up, and you have this moment in life and it's kind of, you're feeling heavy and just kind of like out of tune, and you're thinking like, wow, I'm fed, my family loves me, this and that. It might not even be something that you experience, but something that is impacting someone else, because we are collective beings, right?
Yeah.
And so that connection to others, we're able to, sense into like, their experiences, and that impacts us. There's so many things. And we talk about like bullying, and older people typically say, well, when we were in school, like we didn't have bullying. You did. You just didn't know it, right?
How old were they?
They did, right?
It's probably worse.
They got through it in a very different way. And so some of that implies that this generation now is not as tough, it's not as strong. They're too sensitive. But really what our kids are saying is that not only because things get passed down, they're saying not only am I holding the pain that you think that you didn't experience, I'm also holding mine. And so when we minimize that, right, with our kids, and when we don't take action, kids are left to feel powerless and hopeless. And so sometimes that can be the onset of like, what will lead to mental health, illnesses for them, and I love working with parents, because I think as adults, we sometimes don't fully appreciate like the power we have. Like most jobs, will have the opportunity for you to file a grievance if someone has done you wrong.
Mhm.
And you can expect that if someone touched you inappropriately, said something inappropriately, like if that person, on Monday was sitting next to you, chances are by Tuesday, they're no longer sitting by
Right.
you. We don't afford our kids that same opportunity. When someone's bullying them on the bus, we give them instructions like, well, ignore it or, go tell somebody, but we still put them on that bus day in and day out. And so there's a lot that we're asking our kids to hold. And I think just bringing some awareness to how powerless kids can be. And so sometimes the choices that they make to either, self-harm or either to, abuse drugs or either to, escape mentally in class. And that leads to them not performing academically. Those are the things that are within their little sphere of control.
Right.
Because they don't have the ability to say, I'm not going to get on the bus because of the consequences.
Right.
Similarly to, with adults, in the workplace, and maybe I'm speaking for myself in the military. I know we had a lot of training around sexual assault training and, just how to show up. And it's like adults didn't just arrive, with these behaviors, they were learned.
Yeah.
And so when you walk through the school buildings and you see girls getting patted on the butt or, squeezed inappropriately. And I would witness this, it's that shock factor of what do I do with this? But yet you have groups of people who are saying no, we don't want to talk about sex in school. Right. But then when we get to the workplace, now we have all these rules and we have to go back and, have adults unlearn what we didn't, properly teach them as it relates to boundaries and respecting other people. So, I mean, it's so layered in terms of how and when these moments impact, because what looks like something small to an adult that a child should get over, that child carries that forward into adulthood. And so, again, very layered in terms of what causes us to, experience, a mental health crisis.
Okay. What would you say are the most common mental illnesses or disorders that you see?
I typically see individuals that are battling anxiety.
Okay.
Anxiety, which leads to stress, which leads to fatigue, and it's usually connected to, some experience that has occurred, and the overactive thinking, the intrusive thoughts, the ruminating thoughts can be very exhausting for people, the inner critic. So anxiety, I would say, is definitely something that the vast majority of people that I support suffer
Suffer from?
Yeah.
So when is it? So I suffer from anxiety, but I always thought that this was normal. I thought being stressed out, overthinking, intrusive thoughts were I thought everyone did that until I remember I was having a very low moment, I had a breakdown. I called them. I was like, hey guys, do you experience this? And they were like, no. Or not to the degree that I was experiencing in that moment. I was like, oh, so this is not normal. So when is it these are, I don't know, being an adult, there are going to be stressors in life just growing up versus a diagnosis situation where you actually dealing with something that can be, I guess, counterproductive to going through life.
Yeah, anxiety is very natural, it's something that we all experience. And so I think what we refer to as what is a window of tolerance. It's what your body is able to manage without, other things being impacted, right? So when you kind of move out of what we refer to as a window of tolerance, that is when additional resources are needed to, help manage what's occurring in that moment. And so, and it's unique, I think the beauty of counseling is that each person gets to understand their unique nervous system, because what might be a stressor for you may not be a stressor for someone else. What may invoke anxious feelings for one person may not render someone else to be anxious. And so that's where that self-awareness comes in, when you start to realize I'm unable to do something because of the anxiety, or it's limiting me, or you can physically feel it. Most people, when they are having anxiety attacks, or when the anxiety is becoming too much, you can feel it within your body. There's a certain fatigue. There's a certain maybe way of thinking that comes along with it, that's outside of what your normal range of function would be. And so I think when those things start to occur, that's when it's time to consider getting some support to give you resources around how to better manage.
So, what would you say to someone who, like Carol mentioned, she thought that some of what she was experiencing was normal? So, at what point, I mean, do you have any thoughts on at what point people identify what is not normal? Like, what is a norm?
Yeah, one of the things I'm often amazed by is just how resilient and adaptable we are as people. Oftentimes when, individuals are in counseling, they come to me for something that's happening in the moment, meaning like, I can't stay focused on my job, or, you know, um, maybe they're having present day relationship issues. They're not, that's typically what's bringing them in. But once we start to go through the process of really unpacking and helping them to understand, how past experiences are influencing present day, oftentimes when we are looking at those past moments, individuals are typically unaware that something happened that should not have happened, or something happened too fast or too soon, or something didn't happen. So when children weren't properly nurtured, it's like, oh, well, that no big deal. I would just go to the store like at 5 and, get some food. Okay, well, children at 5 typically are not responsible for feeding themselves and the choice of food. So this individual might present with, overextending themselves, like not knowing how to not help other people, right? And so in the relationship, they may find themselves, the symptom present day might be like, I don't know how to, have good boundaries. I don't know how to not, put other people before myself. And it's because, I see you over there, right? And so, but the beauty of it is when we bring awareness to it, right? When we talked about going back to the past to kind of influence and shape the landscape of like what happens in the future, like that's why I love like being a counselor, is because I can make those connections. I can help people, learn some things that they weren't taught, bring perspective so they can live life in a way that is meaningful for them, right? So the choices, empowerment, and just the ability to show up in a way that's fulfilling, it's possible. Right? Possible.
Who told us we could do this episode without tissues?
Right.
I don't even know. We even had a moment to get some. It still didn't go get none.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, don't cry, friend.
It's okay. Tears, I always say all emotions are welcome.
Yeah.
The tears have a story.
They do.
So you're never gonna hear me as a therapist saying, stop that. I rejoice. I'll be like, yes, let your tears tell their story. Feel into them. They have a story as well.
Yeah.
They have a story.
You mentioned your anxiety being one of the top ones that you see. Would that be one? And is there 2 others, like the top 3 common mental diseases, illnesses in America?
So I would say common, things that people are experiencing is stress or anxiety, depression, and stress. And that stress is connected to feelings of being overwhelmed.
Okay.
So would you consider stress an illness or a disorder?
So I would consider stress is something that happens to us that can lead to,
Okay.
a mental health, illness. Yeah.
Okay.
Amongst young adults, like 18 to 35, is that still the most common, or is there others that you find with that age range?
I would say across the board.
Across the board.
Across
Okay.
the board.
Okay.
Yeah, across the board.
Ooh, we're dealing with it in America then. Okay.
Yeah. But when you think about what anxiety is, right? Anxiety is something that's happening in and we are not taught how to drop down into our body, right? And so when I'm saying like, let the tears come, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, get some tissue, right? That's part of it. We are in many ways not given permission to feel the vast emotions that we have. Like our tears have stories. There's sadness, there's joy, and then sometimes there's just flushing out, right? So our bodies are complex. And so we need to be able to bring awareness to every part of like, and how we show up. There's a purpose, there's a reason. And so when we say, like, don't cry, right? Like in some ways, then the next thing is like, okay, let me go back to, let me make myself stop crying. So now we're putting people right back into the space that's fueling the anxiety, because now you got to think about like, okay, why am I crying?
Right.
How can I stop crying?
Right.
And so again, just feeling into it, because I've never seen a person that was not able to stop crying. Right. So if we give ourselves space and permission to cry, at some point the tears will stop.
Right.
They really will. On their own.
Right.
And same with anger. Like you never see a person who's having a tantrum. Like they literally will exhaust themselves or probably pass out.
Go to sleep.
If it goes on for too long. Right. And so oftentimes, we want to snatch kids up real quick. Like, don't do that. Get up, get up, get up. Okay. All right. I've learned how to be patient, because when we say like, you can't express that anger, what do we then want to happen with the energy of the anger? Yeah. What do we do with that energy? And it's energy. It really is energy.
Yeah.
It's energy.
Yeah. That's so interesting. I feel like I have this conversation a lot with my husband about like, I'm a crier by nature. It is like the first emotion that I go to. Like it's the first way that like I express probably too many emotions that don't involve crying at all, but it's still the mode in which it comes out. And so like, just like trying to relay, like sometimes the conversations go to like, how do we get to like a point where like this, you don't have to get to this point. And I'm like, but this is the first point. Like this is, I'm still good here. You know what I mean? Like if we're getting to somewhere else, then I'm not good. But here is like the natural place for me to go.
Right.
So it's okay. Like it doesn't have to feel like negative. I know it can look like, or like that is like our natural reflexes to like try to like, okay, I want to mitigate that from happening. But like for me, it just is like, no, this is sometimes it just like, I have to stress, like if I'm really stressed, I have to stress cry, and then okay, now I can get shit done. Right. But like before that point, sometimes I'm like, that energy has to leave.
Yeah. And so, a question that you can pose to us, and this might stop him for a little bit, is that,
He's over
He's
there.
here.
Where is he? Okay, all right. Is he really sensing into your discomfort, or is your crying making him uncomfortable? Right? What's coming up in him that when he sees you crying causes him to feel as if he has to suppress that? And so sometimes we have to be able to discern, like, am I uncomfortable seeing you in pain? Because you seem like you're good with your crying, right?
I mean, sometimes,
right? It's part of you recognize that is how your body is responding, right? So sometimes when we, want to, kind of get people to be okay, whatever that looks like, it's like, okay, am I responding to like their discomfort, or is this me not wanting to be uncomfortable?
Right.
I think sometimes too, though, it's like wanting to know how to help. Like I want to know how to like not fix it, but I want to know, like, I want to acknowledge your tears also. Like, I don't want to see you crying and then just be like, you done? You know what I mean? So, like, it's also like, what is the appropriate way to respond?
Or like what does support look like in that moment?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. But see, when you say you done, you haven't really checked in with yourself.
Right.
Like, so
I mean, I was being facetious. He doesn't do
that. No. What I'm saying, like, right? But my point is, like, when you check in with yourself, it's not going to look like you done, right? It's going to be a very different like response, because you're going to be like, what's coming up within me that's causing me to feel like uncomfortable, right? And so that's kind of that self-awareness piece. Sometimes it's like it's hard for us to see other people cry or to be sad. It's like, okay, well, why? Is it okay to pause and, tend to like what comes up in me? Because part of like with teachers, go back to my school days, right? There's this thing called co-regulation. If I'm able to manage my emotions, right, I can better assist you. If I'm dysregulated, if I can't handle the tears, if I'm upset by the tears, you're going to sense that energy. And you're going to feel like something is wrong with you, right? There's going to be an element of like embarrassment or shame. Sometimes when people are very sensitive and they cry a lot, they wear that sense of like, okay, I know I'm a crier. And I get that all the time in sessions, like, oh, they apologize all the time. I'm so sorry for crying. Like, why? Because the world has made them feel like they have to apologize. Like their tears become the very first thing that they apologize for. And just learning to hold space for that. For so many people who are natural criers, and to be able to cry and to not have it be a thing where
Right.
somebody's trying to move you past it or not even bringing awareness to it. Just let it happen. Just keep going. Right. Because it's just tears.
Mhm.
And so I think, again, that co-regulation, once you start to recognize like what's happening in your body, you can then start to move towards helping somebody else to, if necessary, co-regulate, give them the energy and support that they need in order to manage like what they're experiencing. Because if you're dysregulated, if you're not in tune with what's coming up for you, you might feel as if you're helping. But if you hostile towards, the person who's experiencing that because of your own discomfort, the energy of that is going to be felt. The energy of it's going to be felt.
Would you say that I know you work with mainly BIPOC, but would you say that there are illnesses that are more prevalent in BIPOC communities versus?
No. I mean,
Okay.
we're
Everybody's
human.
dealing with everything.
We're
Yeah.
human, right? And what causes or what, what brings the symptoms up, might be, different roads, different paths. At the end of the day, the body is going to experience stress as stress,
Okay.
right? Anxiety is going to look the same, depending on the community that you're in. You may learn to deal with your anxiety,
Right.
in a different way. There are certain things that we don't necessarily talk about in, our community, which is eating disorders. And, there could be this presumption that, oh, that's a, someone else's issue. That's not a us issue. Well, yeah, no, we, eating disorders, it's not something we talk about, but it's a way in which people try to, cope. And so no, I wouldn't necessarily say that symptoms themselves that arise within the body differ. I think they're very similar,
Right.
but what attributes to those symptoms, that's where some distinctions start to happen.
Okay.
Yeah, you mentioned like eating for coping or as a coping mechanism. So we're noticing also a trend of like the very charismatic, life of the party type of individual seem to be the people that are struggling the most. I know in African-American communities, we kind of like laugh to keep from crying. Like it's kind of like what we are, I guess, characteristically, sometimes we do. Have you noticed that that's a coping mechanism that people go towards, or are those the people that we should really be checking in on? Like, for example, Chris, the motivation behind the Mind and Wellness Foundation, he was a fun individual. Robin Williams, he had that same type of personality trait. So like, what are you saying for people that have those type of personalities?
Yeah, I think, people learn how to give people what they want. We learn how to be performative, in some ways, and oftentimes you can probably say that those people are more attuned to other people. They know that if I express this, right, then it's going to be met with like, oh, right. And so to minimize that, it's like if I get a happy face, right, nobody's checking in for me, right?
Right.
So I don't have to worry about, having to be vulnerable, right? Or having someone else, feel sad for me. So sometimes it's just a mask, and being able to, to recognize sometimes when people are struggling, when they do have those masks, it can be difficult because they're presenting as if, life is fine. And it is until it's not, right? And that kind of goes back to, I think we're kind of moving towards like, the narrative of moving away from like the strong Black woman, like, recognizing that that's not the crown that we should be trying to,
Right.
put on every person's head, right? There's a weight that comes with that. And so I think just kind of bringing awareness to sometimes, how people show up. And recognizing that, some of it is performative, to keep the other people that they love from experiencing the hurt that they might be experiencing on the inside. And then sometimes people can disassociate from the pain. And so that's a body's way of coping as well. So we say that disassociation is the genius of trauma. Because if you can't connect to it, then you can't experience it. You can't hurt from it, But if you can't connect with it, you can't heal from it either. So it's so layered.
Right.
It's so layered, but bringing awareness to those parts that are suffering, and those parts that are, doing what they're doing to keep the body safe, to keep the body alive, is important as well.
So you mentioned earlier, if I can go back just a little bit, about when working with other people, having conversation with other people in that moment, like tears or anger or whatever the feeling is, how other people receive that, and do they have a problem with it because they're uncomfortable or because they just don't know what to do? Is it that person's responsibility to make or help them in their comfort? Like, I know for me personally, I have I'm getting into this space where I'm like, I don't care if you're comfortable. Like, so it took me a really long time to get to that space. So is it anyone's responsibility, or how does that person become comfortable in that space? I know there's a lot of questions in that one, but
I think, what I typically say to individuals who, I'm working with is that, it all starts with us. We can't change how anyone experiences us. We can hope, but we can't change. The only thing that we can do is bring awareness to how we show up and be responsible for our healing. And it sounds like you've gotten to a place of acceptance of this is an emotion that you have, and if other people don't like it, you can pass it and move on. That's good growth. And so in that, you're modeling for people to just really accept you for who they are. And if there are, any concerns about how you show up, again, the work becomes their work and not your work.
okay.
And so I think, giving people, permission is what I find myself, encouraging them to do, is to not be responsible for someone else accepting and loving you in the way that that's just authentically you, authentically you. And oftentimes, again, I don't, like to say that everything is connected to the past, but oftentimes things start in the past. Children who are very sensitive and empaths, they move into adulthood with, feelings that, they need to hide or be ashamed of the tears. And it's oftentimes because, the labels that were put around it. Oh, don't be a crybaby. Stop crying. You cry too much. What you crying for now? Right. So all of that gets layered. And then the looks that come along with it, right? Even if people aren't saying anything, it's like, oh, she crying again, and even if no one says anything, right? People become so sensitive to it, they'll start interpreting people's looks. And so again, that's anxiety. That's a person that's in their head. And so I try in my practice to help people, accept all parts of themselves. And I use parts because that internal family system is a way in which, I, practice. It's a modality, if you will. And, just recognizing that we're all different and we're all unique. And I was blessed with a very sensitive child. And, I, am a Taurus. I'm a bull. I smile.
Me too.
But there's some thunder on there. You can get these horns, right?
Yep.
And so having a sensitive
Not the quick
child,
cosign.
I feel it right here.
so I had to learn how to, be with individuals who were different from me. But that was my work to do. But as a mother, it all started when we were coming from Panda Express, and my daughter, it was her 7th birthday. Panda Express was like her favorite place. And it was raining and I wanted to get home, right? But I'm going to take her to get a Panda Express because it's going to be birthday dinner. And as we're driving, a man is holding a sign and it says, hungry will work for food. And she was like, oh, Mom, the guy right there, he needs some food. And I was like, well, when we say our prayers and we say, bless those that don't have, that's who we're praying for. And I drove off. And I looked in the rear mirror and this little kid is crying.
Oh.
And she's like, I just food with And I could feel it welling up in my stomach because I'm talking about it, because I could see her so clearly. And that was my shift. That was my shift to say, you missed it and she got it.
Yeah.
Right? She saw his humanity, for one. And she recognized that she had the ability to do something about it. But I was willing to just simply say it because I had been conditioned that wasn't my responsibility. Right? I was just going to keep on moving. And so in that moment, I had to take pause and I looked at the gift that was in front of me and I said, okay, let me slow down. Let me pay attention to what, as a person who's, come up through the military and, through all my upbringing, what have I missed? What gifts have I overlooked? What have I, kind of suppressed? And I had to go back to my daughter and I had to acknowledge like the gift that she had. And so in that, I use the energy of that with my clients to kind of help reparent them, for the parent that didn't see like that is really a strength for you to be able to connect. Because truly, if we all kind of strive for being more sensitive, right? Recognizing other people's humanity and just pausing and really to connect with people,
Right.
like, wow, how different would this world be?
I love that you called it a strength. I also have an emotional child. So as a parent, how do you encourage that gift, but also let them know that the world is not going to see it as a gift? It's like, what's that balance?
Yeah. So I teach my daughter, that for one, it's a gift. Because I already know, because I was guilty of it, that the world is going to tell you otherwise.
Right.
The world is going to cause you to shrink. You cry too much. You're too sensitive. Get toughened up, right? So I really had to teach her that is a strength. And she didn't always believe it, right? She had to grow into really seeing other people outside of like how she saw herself to realize that, wow, everybody doesn't have this. This is something special, right? So constantly cultivating in her mind that this is a strength. I think for me as a parent, when someone is so sensitive in the way that my daughter is, that gift, what I had to help her to understand is that you can't be on the ground with them, right? If someone was crying, she's feeling all of it, right? You can't help people if you're crying just as hard as they are. So goes back to tap into yourself, right? Figure out what's happening with you and then extend a hand. So she had to learn how to take care of herself first. This one boy slapped her. And one of the moms that she was with was like, I told her to hit him back. I gave her permission. And her response was, well, he's one of God's kids too. Like, why would I want to hurt him?
What a gift.
Yes.
So it was just kind of like, okay, dang, she got us again. Right. So the notion of like, so what I had to show her is that you don't have to hurt people, but you do have to have some healthy boundaries around how people treat you, because she was willing to sacrifice herself so that others can be comfortable.
Yeah.
And I saw patterns of that, right? And so just kind of recognizing that it is a strength, but you got to recognize the vulnerable side of it. And so,
So to be clear, no one slapped the boy back.
No, he didn't get slapped. He didn't get slapped. So hopefully he'll go on. And his college essay will be one of like, how mercy and grace was extended to him until the thunder come back down on him. Right. So no, he didn't get it. And so, but with your sensitive child, I think, just constantly, because we already know as adults that people are going to, tell your baby that they need to be different. And the reality is it's a beautiful gift to have, to be in tune with yourself, to be in tune with others, but learning how to recognize how to use it as a strength, but then also to recognize when people might be taking advantage of it. So that discernment of, just recognizing when you have to pull out of the situation and healthy boundaries. Because the world is, the world, and the world will, try to convince them otherwise, that those traits are not. But man, if I just think about some of the woes that we have in this world, and if there were more sensitive people, more caring people, that alone would drastically shift the lived experience of so many people.
Well, now that I'm hearing you talk about your daughter, I'm thinking maybe my child is not that a sensitive child. I'm not quite sure. Granted, he's 3, so he's young, but like he's very
The way he read me yesterday.
He's very in tune with other people's feelings. So he can tell, like, even at his young age, if someone is not feeling well or not feeling good, he's very like, Mommy, are you sad? He's like constantly like wanting to touch, and like he's a physical touch type of kid.
Exact opposite of what you like.
Yeah, he is the opposite of me. But I can just tell, because he's a 3-year-old, so he's crying, right?
Yeah.
But I can just tell that he's gonna be sensitive to a lot of more things that I am sensitive to.
Yeah.
And I just don't want to discourage him from being That because that's not me.
Well, as you were talking about it, I can see you kind of stiffening up a little
Yeah,
bit. So
Yeah, I
again,
do.
it's kind of the discomfort, like
Yeah.
what comes along with like him being that way that makes you feel uncomfortable. And as you're talking, I had this one family that came in, and the son, was very much a physical touch type person, and dad was like, I'm not quite sure what's wrong with him. I think it could be this, but he wants hugs all the time. And I'm my therapist mind is listening, and I'm like, okay, your kid wants hugs all the time, and that's a problem. Okay. So this is why I like working with parents, because dad, right, is a man, and from his perspective, his son should not be this affectionate, and he's sensing that something is wrong. Right. Because of how dad has been conditioned.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we kind of had to unpack, in a very gentle way. It's like, that's what kids are designed to do.
Right.
If your son, at, the age of 8, never wanted to be around you, never wanted to touch you, I'd be concerned then. But the fact that he wants to be with you, he wants to touch you, like, man, high five yourself. You're doing something right. That's a beautiful thing. That's a beautiful thing.
Oh, to be a fly on the wall when a therapist wants to read you, but they have to like quietly walk you.
Yeah.
To them, like-
Yeah.
Okay, so what are the signs that someone may be having a mental health crisis?
So there could be a variety of things, but typically when people withdraw, isolate themselves, that's usually like the first thing that we start to see. I think because I literally see people physically change in session, I'm able to kind of notice like when a person is kind of going into what we refer to like that dorsal vagal energy. When you think about like a turtle, right? Turtle moving slow and then kind of retracting into their shell, it's like, that shell becomes their home away from home. And so when you start to see people kind of do that sometimes, right? When they're withdrawing and, not wanting to be in contact or connecting with other people, sometimes that is a sign that the person might be suffering start beginning to suffer with something.
Even for introverts? Sorry. I didn't mean
So
to-
introverts are very different. Like
Okay.
introverts are, so that's very different because introvert energy is very different from the energy I'm talking
Okay.
about.
All right.
Typically the energy that I'm talking about when people are starting to kind of withdraw, literally their shoulders will start to fold in.
Okay.
Literally there's a more somber, there's not a lot of muscle tone. Like I can physically see
Okay.
like a person's, demeanor shift and the body effects. So there's usually not much muscle tone. It's just kind of like, here going through the motion, just kind of popping. Energy in introverts, they still have a lot of, they can give some energy. It's like they just need to withdraw, but then introverts come back out.
Okay.
Right. And,
Okay.
and it looks different. And so, so when someone is just, kind of withdrawing and being reclusive, that could be a sign. When someone is finding it very difficult to stay within their window of tolerance, you can see that many things are starting to set them off. That there's a sign there that perhaps, something is activating them and they're not able to self-regulate. Typically when someone is hypervigilant, it becomes, or it looks as if like, okay, that's just that person. That person is always on 10. Your body can't stay on 10. So if a person is always on 10, then something is definitely going on, right? That person's body internal system is literally being worn down. And so when they say stress kills, it really does because your system is overactivated. And so, and when you just start to see a person that like the energy shifts, the demeanor shifts, significant shift I'm talking about, right? And they just kind of stay there. Or there's a sense of like, maybe I'm stuck. Like, I don't know what to do next, right? That helplessness. Those are signs where like, well, maybe the person needs to kind of check in with someone to see like, okay, what else is going on? You might, need some support around.
And how long can someone operate in this before they recognize that they're even in crisis, or even after they've recognized they're in crisis?
A lot of people go to their graves not getting the support they need. And I don't mean like, by, literally stress themselves, overwork themselves, or so hypervigilant. Sometimes people never realize because the body is naturally designed to keep us safe and to keep us alive. And sometimes the coping mechanisms that people choose are a direct reflection that something was happening, but then this was a choice. So when people gamble, it's keeping them from stressing, overthinking, sex addiction, drug addiction, food addiction. They look like, things that people just normally do. Shopping. People do these things to distract from the pain. From
Can you talk about some healthy coping mechanisms? Is that a question we have later? Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah. So one of the so when you were talking about like the anxiety, so one of the strategies that I like to give people is to put some distance between like what is causing the overthinking by thinking of like a character's voice, that has a very distinct voice, like a Mickey Mouse or like a Donald Duck. And if you're able to turn like that voice in your head that's overthinking, that's criticizing into like one of those characters' voice, you can't stay with the conversation.
I just thought about it in Mickey's voice, and it is very alleviating, yes.
Because those voices are connected to positive experiences. And it's like, okay, this is too silly for me to, continue thinking about. So it disrupts that thinking pattern enough for you to come out of it, right?
Yeah.
And that coming out of it, that's just enough time for you to now say like, okay, what else should I be focused on, right? And if it continues for extended periods of time, then of course you can definitely, get more support around it. But that's generally, a tool that I, give individuals who deal with like intrusive thoughts or ruminating thoughts, because you can literally have like a whole screenwrite like played out in your head
before your morning coffee.
The argument, what you go to, what they said, what they were wearing, how it was all going down, and you're the only actor like in this whole scene, right? So being able to disrupt that, and reclaim some of that time back so that it can be focused to doing things that are more meaningful. Using that character's voice is one strategy that I like to give. I'm a huge fan of like meditation, even if it's just like 5 minutes. I can't do yoga for a long period of time, even though yoga works for people. Like I told you, I was like the master of busy. So like it's hard for me to sit still. So, but 5 minutes of meditation kind of centers me. Nature walk. So just kind of finding like that thing that grounds you, that you can, reflect back to. I think I mentioned at the start that, Fannie Lou Hamer, is a spirit guide that, I use. And I think when we start to identify like positive resources that we can reference, right? And if the more you use it, for some people, it's spiritual, it's the Bible. For some people, it could be remembering like a trip, where they were happy and there's family. But the more we use like these positive experiences, the more your body learns how to settle into like those keywords. And so for me, giving clients, or helping them find like a wise figure resource, a nurturing figure resource, or a protective figure. So when you go into situations that might be stressful or cause you to feel anxious, if you can kind of, allow yourself to experience the safety, the wisdom and the protection like of like, that trio, for many people, it's very affirming because you got your posse with you.
Yeah.
Okay. Following up on like when a person isn't having a mental health crisis, as like a friend, I think this question came up because the Reed is experiencing it, with Kid Fury. He said that he was told that he was in a mental health crisis and needed to take some time away in order to get help. And so what are ways that as a friend or a parent or a sibling of someone that is going through a mental health crisis can acknowledge that and urge someone to get help without it being like more damaging?
Yeah, it's hard when you see a loved one suffering. Because again, we're wired for connection. And so you want to rescue, you want to, get that person out of that place of suffering. And, if any of you are parents, you know that sometimes your kids will take advice or hear things from other people better than they will from you. So sometimes it's really positioning people who have like the resources and the wisdom that you trust to also kind of run interference in that regard. Um, they might receive it a little different. But it also kind of goes back to not that you just want to allow a person to suffer and drown, but truly, once you've presented the options to a person to get the support that they need, the choice really is there. And so then you have to, in those moments of them going through like their healing process, or even before they get to their healing process, it's so important that you identify your own support system, because their suffering, the energy of that is going to transfer into your body. And if you're not taking care of yourself as you're taking care of them through that suffering, you're going to come out worn down, and you're going to have your own, stories that are going to need to be told. So I would say for friends, for families, anyone who's witnessing someone go through, an experience while they're doing their healing journey, or even if they decide that they're not ready for it, it's important for the supporters, for the loved ones to find a support, find a safe place that allows them to kind of express what's happening internally.
You've already mentioned some ways and tools that people can use. I don't know if you have any more you want to share, but on top of that, what are you thinking? You mentioned yoga, like I'm assuming would be like a natural remedy, meditation. What tips and tools would you give somebody that's in a crisis, and what does that look like trying to navigate doing natural remedies versus medication?
Yeah. So if you're in a crisis, like yoga is definitely not going to,
Right.
to do it. Right.
Right.
It's just stretching and moving your body is not going to be, it's not going to resolve it. I think if you are in a true crisis, or if you feel you're on the verge of experiencing a crisis, connecting with the right therapist is going to be important. And when I say the right therapist, it's hard to find therapists right now because so many people, are suffering. But when I say the right therapist, everyone is not going to work, well with anyone, right? And so even as a therapist myself, like 2 sessions with one and I was out. I knew like, okay, this doesn't align with,
Right.
like what my body needs. And as a therapist, I know that, but oftentimes people will sit through therapy feeling like this is how it's supposed to be, when in reality, it's just not a good fit. The way the
Right.
person is practicing, is not for them. And so, there's talk therapy, there's somatic therapy, there's art therapy, there's therapy that involves like movement, so there are so many different ways in which people can, connect with someone to support them through their healing. And I think just being aware that it's not just about talking about the problem alone, doesn't resolve it.
Right.
Knowing that your toe hurt because you stubbed it is not going to make the pain go away.
Right.
Right. So you have to really have, a person who has other tools that they can use to support a person and moving towards, and through healing.
So to piggy off of Saya's question, we recently just saw a TikTok video of a doctor saying like how, and you mentioned it as well, it's like sugars, and he even did like red dye number
40.
40
Yeah.
can also affect your mood and how you're feeling. But a lot of times doctors want to go straight to putting you on some type of medication. So in those instances, like, should we be cutting out sugars, or should we be looking at how much dairy we might be intaking, things like that we can be, when we're feeling stressed or anxious, that we can start maybe cutting out to see if those are not triggering, but I guess attributing to different anxiety or stress.
Yeah, so this might not be the best analogy, but this speaks to my personal experience here, right? Recognizing that, you want to lose like, 30, 40 pounds and then just cutting something out is not immediately going to make the weight like fall off, right? Like, so if that were the case, you kind of have to start early. Like simply removing something is not going to make the weight fall off just like that, right? Removing, dairy from your diet if you're experiencing anxiety crisis is not going to provide relief in time, right? And I'm not certain that, I don't know the science behind, what you've just shared, but I will say, having a holistic diet, is important to maintain, not just to get you through a mental health crisis, but to maintain, mental stamina and mental wellness. So that's kind of how I would approach it. Start with doing right by your body before, you get to the point of like, oh, I need to remove that something. I would recommend more a lifestyle shift as opposed to, the reactionary, response of just removing something.
Right.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I was just catching up. Okay, so what resources are out there to assist someone who may be experiencing or after, in the middle, or before mental crisis?
Yeah, so I know, like, the state counties have, crisis lines that individuals can call, for support. There are, referral groups, clinicians of color, inclusive therapists, Black Girls Rock, Psychology Today. They all have, therapists, throughout, the United States, depending on where you're located, where individuals can, kind of scour the internet, if you will, to see like, a therapist who might align with, how they want to, receive support. But those are some different ways in which, people can receive support. And, sometimes, going to the ER might be, the thing that a person needs. If the crisis is that dire, you might have to. And again, I'm just going to put this out there. If you take a loved one to the ER for mental health support, be prepared post that experience to follow up and get them seen by, someone who's going to provide therapy post that, because that experience in itself is going to be traumatic. Without question, without question.
Thank you.
We are noticing that there has been an increase in individuals seeking to have some assistance therapy, whatever the case may be, but that there seems to be a barrier at being able to receive the assistance because they can't afford the sessions. And there seems to be like a flaw in our healthcare system with regards to the insurance companies, just being able to, get maybe more than like 8 sessions. Sometimes, like, how do you know if that 8 sessions is enough? What have you found is the best way to navigate, being able to afford it, or finding, providers who even work with your insurance, just all of those things? Give me advice.
Yeah, it is hard, trying to, for one, find a therapist who's going to truly, support someone through like their healing journey, as opposed to, big medical model center, or, in terms of like you have somebody just kind of listen to you but you're not really healing, right? And oftentimes, when individuals are on Medicaid, it is very difficult to find a therapist, who practices in a way that brings in these eclectic tools that accept Medicaid, because the reimbursement rates are so low. So oftentimes they'll find themselves having to use community health, and when and those resources are great. And I actually worked, with the clinic before, so I'm aware of how, support is provided. But unfortunately, it's not always the best setup in terms of like, what could lead to, the most effective way of a person like getting the healing that they need. And so, but community health centers for people who have Medicaid, they're definitely there, but a lot of private practitioners, don't always accept Medicaid because the reimbursement rates are so low.
Okay.
I think when you mention about the limited session, that's usually going to be employee assistance programs where
Mhm.
they might say, oh, you're only allotted X number of sessions. But if someone has, insurance, typically the insurance, and I think really with COVID has been, I've not seen a lot of barriers around people using their insurance, but because depending on which insurance you have, practitioners may not accept that insurance
Right.
because the reimbursement rates are so low. And so,
Okay.
so it can be, difficult to, find like the practitioner, who has the skills, and the availability,
Right.
that also matches certain budgets.
Right.
So that's definitely true.
So should therapy be like reactive or proactive?
Oh, both for sure.
Okay.
Both for sure.
So is your aim to stop seeing patients or to make it so that they come see you less often?
So my goal is really to help people heal. And so for some people, what that looks like is that, I need to have what looks like, quote unquote, maintenance, right? I might just see you once a month because maybe the environment or the people that I love and that love me don't know how to hear the stories that sometimes unfold within, my lived experience.
Right.
And so it becomes a safe space. It becomes a place where a person can just kind of, free their minds. But to me, that's still healing because you're
Mhm.
still recognizing that this space is needed in order for you to maintain, the ability to, or sustain rather, the ability to kind of, keep moving forward life and to be mentally healthy. For some people, when people experience trauma and then there's complex trauma when multiple events have happened, particularly if there was trauma in childhood, developmental trauma. Oftentimes individuals, could be in therapy for years because when you're working with trauma, moving slow is moving fast. And so
Mm.
you have to, again, cultivate that environment where a person is growing and healing, but you can't move too fast either.
I kind of have a follow-up question. You kind of touched on it, but what does healing look like? Or what
Mm.
can that feel like? And what does finding a therapist that matches your needs feel like? Because I know that I had a therapist that I wasn't vibing with, and I had to ask my girls. I was like, is this how this is supposed to feel? Because I don't think this is right. You know what I mean? But like not really knowing what a baseline was because it was my first time in therapy too.
So my therapist hand wants to go like this when you say, what does healing looks like?
Not
right?
the Birdman hand.
No, this is because it's good stuff.
Mm.
So for me, how it looks for me is very different how it's going to look for the client. For me, how it looks is when a person is able to release something, right? That was holding them down or a burden that's kind of lodged in their body that they didn't even realize was there. And so sometimes bringing awareness to that and for them to have that moment of like it's a sigh sometimes, or it's the awakening of connecting something like, oh, okay. Like, so healing, it takes place throughout like, the process and it just kind of unfolds, in a very like beautiful way. Or when, there's a treatment modality that I use and a client comes in or comes back and, I'm like, okay, well, let's revisit that. And it's like, well, if it's okay, this came up this week, so I don't want to talk about that. Right.
Mhm.
And that they no longer want to talk about was the something that brought them into therapy. And at one point, tears were flowing and they couldn't even get the story out. But now we've processed the healing. And now that big thing is it's just that.
Right.
Right. And so sometimes clients don't even recognize
The thing,
that beautiful shift. And so my therapist parts are going like, okay, yes, we don't have to talk about that. Right. So I'm celebrating internally. So it's going to look and it's going to feel so different. And just to be transparent, the other part of what healing looks like is when, and it doesn't always take place in the first session. And sometimes it does, but I've had clients to say like, I've been waiting for you. Like, where have you been? Like, I practice virtually. And so to like click on And it's the connection of I'm you and you're me. Right?
Mm-hmm.
There are some things that I don't even have to say. There are some stuff that space has already been created for.
Yeah.
Right? And so for them to just immediately settle into like that, that's good stuff. That's healing for somebody because you've arrived at a space. You can just be you. You can just be you. And so again, it just unfolds, very differently for some clients, and particularly my teenagers. They're like, oh my gosh, I couldn't wait to get to session today. I have so much to tell you, right? It's somebody sees me, somebody hears me, somebody values me, somebody is making space for me, and to know that I can be that and they have that for them. That's powerful. That's powerful. That's a lifeline for so many people to know that you can get into that space and your story is not going to be judged. It's not going to be criticized. It's not even going to be dissected in a way that makes you feel like that your lived experience is problematic. So healing just kind of, it's expansive in terms of how it looks and how it unfolds. But when it happens,
So do you have to break up with the therapist that didn't work?
For me, I do.
Okay.
I do. I can't do it. What I know about healing in my time and what's out there, I got to do what's right by me. And, I tell clients this all the time. I empower them to make a choice. This is about your healing. This is not about me. It's okay if I'm not a good fit for you.
Okay, so let me clarify. Like, can I just ghost you? Or do I have to have a conversation that I'm not coming back?
That's a whole other conversation.
So you can do both. You can do both. I used to be a sister lock consultant, right? And so I would always tell new folks that I'm training, if a client's not sitting in your chair, they're sitting in somebody else's.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And if they didn't book an appointment with you, they didn't book an appointment with you.
Ooh.
Wait for the next appointment and service that person. Like I'm not chasing people, right? And because I know that person made a choice. And I'm not going to, overanalyze the why, right? If they want to come back.
It must be so nice not overanalyze the why.
Wow. What's that like?
But that's more of a business thing, right? And not so much, but really, it's holding that space to recognize that sometimes people are going to make decisions, and those decisions, should be in their best interest. Yeah. Ideally, it would be nice, if a client didn't come back to me. Oftentimes what I'd reach out to them because at some point you do have to, you want to discharge them, So I do reach out and I'll say, hey, I'm just checking in to see how everything's going. If you've moved on, that's perfectly fine, but know that I'm here to support you. So it's not, like that you're leaving, this person in such a distress because, you no longer want to work with them. That's part of the work. Okay. And it's perfectly okay.
I think that's also like anxiety inducing as someone going in, you go into a session. I've also gone to therapy. I end up stopping and I'm trying to start back up. But my last one, there were so many microaggressions that were happening in that session that I was just like, I feel worse after the session than I felt coming in. So for me, I'm just like, I feel like I don't owe you an explanation for why I'm not coming back because you were that terrible. At the same time, I don't know if it's like dating. Like, should I have told you that you sucked or do we just never speak again?
Well, if the person really wanted to know, if you didn't reach out, they have
they never contacted me again.
They have the ability to contact you as well. So it's a dual thing.
Okay.
I would say move on and get the healing you deserve.
Yeah,
deserve.
I like
Not
that.
me. I like that. I like that a lot. Okay, so can you plug your practice? Are you currently accepting clients?
So I'm currently not accepting clients.
Oh.
But
great session. Guess we won't see you again ever.
I'm currently not accepting. So
get your healing from this episode.
This is all she's giving out.
No, but there are some amazing people out there that are doing great work. And so, we talk about, therapy, but the field of therapy is just so broad. Again, there's art therapy, there's dance therapy. They're even working like in nature, so again, depending on like what your needs are as a person, like you can literally find someone who works in the lane and in the area that's going to align, with your spirit and, again, like how you want to connect, in the healing space. So even though, my practice is full at this point, when people reach out to me, I try to still put them like in hands of other people, who might be able to support them or direct them. But I would just say, there are some great therapists out there. There are a variety of ways in which people, practice. And again, we're talking about licensed professionals here, but, there are some individuals who use coaches, and there are some, I do have my concerns about coaching and specific healing work, but depending on where you are and what you're trying to accomplish, that could be, another option as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
And where can people reach out to you or find you? Or I don't know if you ever, like, if you're on social media, and then on social media, sometimes maybe you just like, I was thinking about this today, and like people can like connect with you there or something like that. Like, I would just love to hear you talk. Be honest.
I
don't know if it's just me. I don't know.
So like literally, I'm trying to take a vacation. I just sold my restaurant like last month.
Look at you.
So in the process of like, being a mental health therapist, trying to help people heal, going through the pandemic and having a restaurant, working those simultaneously, have a daughter who just went off to college. I'm like, okay, let me
You
give
have
me
lived
some
like
time.
5 lives.
Yeah.
Let's like
Jack of all trades, for sure.
Busy.
Yeah.
So I am trying to be intentional about,
That's fair.
not allowing myself to dive in, because I truly enjoy like, helping people. And so in my mind, the wheels will start spinning in terms of like all these different things. And then it's like, nope, sit on your hands, sit still. So I'm in a season of learning how to just be still, because coming out of these last couple of years, I've been on a marathon, and I did not condition for the marathon. So I'm tired.
I feel that.
Well, whenever you're done with your rest.
Yeah.
So you
I was like, I
message us.
respect that. But yeah, we want to see you again.
Yes.
But I would
Love
also
this.
put in a plug for group therapy as well. Oftentimes, people are looking for like individual therapy one-on-one, but group therapy is actually very powerful as well. And so group therapy is just really bringing individuals, together who are collectively working towards, a similar, goal as it relates to, their lived experience. And so group therapy is another way to.
So our podcast.
Yes. I was thinking the same thing. I was like, oh, we do this all the time.
Yeah, right. And you could probably feel the synergy
I
flowing.
know
in
the
there.
advice is always great, but
You get what you get.
Sometimes it's more
When you walk
damaging,
into this room,
but,
it's going to be.
Much is learned. I don't know
Right.
if it's applied.
well, thank you for sitting with us. We really appreciate
Yeah.
it.
No, this was awesome. Thank
Yeah.
you all so much for having me. I definitely appreciated my time here today.
Thank you so much.
Yay.
Well, one thing we gonna do
Is tangent.
Let's say because we had a lot of questions and we were a little bit more prepared. So
Yeah. All other times, y'all gonna get what you gonna get.
So basically, it's I'm Tiff, and it's Tiff's Tangent, because I'm always tangenting and asking like really random questions, things that I was just pondering.
That may or may not have anything to do with the topic at hand at all. But
Today
it's okay.
I'm on topic.
You are, I'm proud of you.
I do have one that I added, but it's just for you, because we've had this conversation about butterflies and whether or not they are a positive or negative, like bodily experience or like preemptive sign. And I would love to know your thoughts on that sensation and whether or not it is a good or a bad thing.
When we experience butterflies,
Yeah.
Oh, can I give a binary response? Yeah,
Sure.
because I think it can be both.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, well, there you go.
Like, and it's funny because it's a sensation that starts in the body, and depending on what you're connecting it with, right?
Mhm.
It might be a sense of like, oh, there's a little anxiety or there's a stress. But if you've ever had like, what is it like? 4th grade, 6th grade, when you have like those crushes, did you guys still talk about crush?
20, 25. Let's keep it real. You see something you like, you see something you like. It is what it
And
is.
those little flutters, like,
Yeah.
ooh.
Mhm.
It's like, where is the butterfly experience occurring?
Mhm.
Right.
I think that's the question.
Okay.
Like, what body part is experiencing the flutter?
So in 3rd grade, maybe it's like a
What are the
good.
options?
Oh,
Every part.
Okay.
But I'm just curious.
Yeah, we're wondering if at 3rd grade when you have like a puppy love crush, if that's good. But at 25, it's like
Warning, danger, you about to be in trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a good sensation.
No, I've never not liked it, so I don't know about
Right.
anybody else.
Okay.
You see me,
Me.
I've been married for what, 22 years, and I'm rocking like,
Hey, 22 years? That's what I'm talking about.
like, oh, that's a good sensation.
I used to
Okay.
have butterflies like before soccer games sometimes, and I
Yeah.
noticed that like a lot of times it would be like games that I would score. So like that was a positive
Like
correlation.
your body was like, yeah.
But
you
in
about to do it.
my early 20s, when I was experiencing butterflies around around men,
Nick.
Oh.
it was
Oh.
often like red flag,
Oh.
like the worst men that I dated. What
Oh,
encouraged
Jesus.
Girl, you in
this- Which is
danger.
what encouraged this conversation. It was like I had never heard about butterflies being a potential like negative thing until like very recently. And so I was like, am I the only one that like didn't know that this could be a red flag instead of a positive thing? You know what I mean? Like kind of like a warning that your body is trying to be like, bitch, no. You know what I mean?
So like
that's what
intuitive
made me
feeling is more so what you're connected it with. Like your body is saying like, okay, there's something here that the energy where it's giving you like a little warning.
Mhm.
Okay.
It's like a little like fight or flight, maybe.
Yeah.
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 But yeah.
But that's the beauty of like how unique we are. Like you're able to like know the landscape of your body to make the connection between when it was on the soccer field, like I scored. So that
Mhm.
was a positive amp up. But then when, opposite sex was around, like, and it's happening, like maybe I need to kind of
Right.
like lean in and look a little harder and pay
Yeah,
attention.
definitely. Yeah. I
yeah.
mean, it's definitely learned. Like, I mean, I thought it was positive because of my correlation with it on the soccer field at first. And then it just like realizing basically what you said, like about like where it is in the body is like what made me realize be able to like
Discern the
Yeah,
difference
the
between
differentiation. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, sorry. Anyways.
time?
All right. Okay, so the fun tangent. Okay, so what did you think happiness or success was or would be when you were 21 versus what you know it to be today?
Oh, no. 21. I think
Stuff.
Yeah. I was about to say for me, it had to be probably for sure maybe fully in a relationship with kids. And let me tell you right now, I can feel successful without children because I do. And I don't have any. And as a matter of fact, not having any feels like more of a win than having
I don't
them.
like your aggression towards kids
Why?
today.
Whatever. I love kids.
Speak your
But
truth,
when I
science.
have rest, kids love me because I have
That's
rest.
what I say. You're probably the best auntie.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
But then
Fun.
I can take you to
And
your
drop
mama's
you.
house
Yeah.
and drop you off and go and get my rest.
Yeah.
So, but I think I like being able to have that. Like, I think before it was definitely like very much whatever society said was success. And for me, I have cultivated a life that is very different and opposite of that. And one of the things I realized is like having rest makes me better for the people that I want to be able to plug into. And I can't do that if I have my own kids. So that for me, like definitely feels like success. And I think living a life that does not look like anything anyone else has also. And for me, before it was like, well, this is what everyone else says this should look like. But I never have wanted that. I was agreeing with it because that's what everyone said that's what you needed to have. But I always was like, corporate America. No. Right. Like, how can I do this kind of, but not really do it? And then I was like, oh no, I just never really wanted to do it. And so like being okay with being like, that's not for me. And I had to grow into that, but that definitely 21, I was like, oh no, you for sure need to be married, have kids, have the I don't know,
infamous
pick a fence.
checklist.
Yeah, like
the
this list
prescripted
that,
life.
Yeah.
right. That I think honestly, I never checked in. And then when I checked in, I was like, oh, I don't want any of these things. Like that's cool to have, but it's not what I had to have prescribed. So that's for me.
For me, it was stuff. Like I wanted the big house, the luxury car. I wanted all the Chanel, the Louis. Like I want all the stuff, all the things. I still want those things.
I was about to say, get it, Shane.
I still want those things.
Your love language gifts.
Yes.
But I feel like that was all that I thought equated success was. If I had all these things, I was successful. But now I also feel outside of things, I still want these things, is freedom.
I like that you're still honest about that.
Yeah,
also,
I do.
I do want to.
I mean,
These things plus.
Yeah, like give me all the things for sure. But I also like the idea of freedom, like financial freedom and like freedom of like time and space as well. Like one of my Tyler Perry and Oprah Winfrey have really done a lot to change based on like how they've been able to create opportunities for people in our community. And they have the financial and the time and the freedom to do those things and how they choose to allocate their resources is so mind blowing to me. And I like hope that one day I can affect our community in that same positive way. So for me now, like success is like having the freedom to do all the things that you want to do, I think now.
I love that.
Mine is simple. It was a checklist, degrees, get married, kids, home. Like that was my checklist. Now 47, I'm like, success for me looks like me engrossing myself into being of service to others. So nothing to do with me. How can I serve others? But acts of service is my life.
There you go. Gotta know it.
Yeah.
I think for me, I definitely the checklist I think was a big part of mine, and it still is. Like again, like I think what I thought it was going to happen much earlier in my life. Not much. I mean, I'm not like old, but I thought that it was like it was tied to a timeline for me also that I have like released, and I feel like much less stress about it now. Like I think I want kids, but I go back and forth every day. You know what I mean? Like I'm like, this life is really easy without them. So like maybe that's fine.
And I will drop mine off anytime.
A village. It takes a village, okay?
But I also think just like not tying it to numbers in any sense. So like not like a salary, not doing X by a certain number of years, not having like a certain number of kids. Like I think like just like releasing that expectation has helped me so much in terms of like it's weird because it's not limiting. Like it can be a goal, but for me it was limiting. Like acknowledging what I didn't have yet, if that makes sense.
No,
and
makes
so
sense.
like releasing that has really helped like my happiness like exponentially, I would say.
I would probably the prescripted life, I would think, is what I thought success was at 21, like doing the things that, made your family, like you have to look away, you have to be away, you have to do the things away. But I think it's fair enough to say I'm very different. Like I kind of don't care a little bit. Like I don't. Yeah, I just a lot don't care. Like there's not a certain way you have to look. At work, I don't live there. Well, shoot, I feel like I live there. I work
that was a slip that was accurate.
Right.
Yes.
Go ahead.
It was. I work in corporate America, and for a while, my sister and I worked at the same place, and people didn't know that we were related because, she looks the corporate part. And I'm just like, you paying me for my mind or how I look right now?
Oof.
Because how I look is not going to get your job done right now. So I think success for me now is just living life on my own terms.
You know what I thought it was at 10 though? A waterbed and like those cars that had like the wood strip on the side. They got money. Like them people got money.
I remember one time I was in Safeway and I was like, you know what? When I grow up, I want to be a cashier because they get all the money that's in here. Obviously.
Take it home. Makes perfect sense.
Yeah. I was sick.
All right, so now we're going to do Meme of the Week. Meme of the Week. Okay, so this week's meme comes from Honeydew Holistics. I was getting nervous because there's an eggplant down here and I didn't quite know where I got this from, but it seems very like wellness based.
Oh, okay. Is it?
Yeah, this one's
It is
positive.
wellness.
I thought that was the meme. I thought the meme was like, I was getting nervous because there's an eggplant down here.
Wellness.
I was like, what are we? Okay,
No, I'm gonna keep
What
it.
is wellness?
I'm gonna keep it clean.
Okay. Proud of you.
So it says,
Drop.
I really want Black women to start saying out loud, that isn't enough for me more often. And friendships, relationships, on the job, the subway, just everywhere. We deserve so much more.
That's
Yeah,
really
that was
nice.
good.
Yeah.
Aw, you did.
I would
pull
say
that
send that to me, but it's probably in the group.
I got
chat
another
that
one
I-
then. This next chapter of life is called I Told Y'all Niggas. We're going to keep that on brand.
All right.
And that tracks.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mic drop.
Oh, Lord.
All right. So how we like to wrap up our episodes, we call it Afro Shade. So we're going to affirm people kinda. Or you can affirm them for real. So it's completely up to you.
Affirmation on the shady side.
Yeah, affirmation light
To our audience.
is how we like to call it.
Let's
anyone
go.
led to go first? Is there one?
Do I have one?
Not me.
You don't want to go? Okay. Whatever I look at. Okay, I'll go.
I thought we were all looking
Feel
at
like
each
you're
other.
ready.
That's for yes.
Go
Really? Okay. I'm going to affirm for our listeners today to live life on your own terms. Get the help you need. It's necessary and you deserve it.
Look
I
at
affirm
you.
self. Okay.
Look at you.
Love that
Yes.
for you. Oh, I'm next.
I mean,
sure.
are you ready?
No.
Oh, okay. You want me to go?
Sure, if
my
you're
leg.
ready.
I mean, I'm gonna make
Come
it do
on.
what it do.
Come on, Bishop.
All right, come on,
Right.
preacher.
About to be a whole sermon. Is this first closing or?
I'll let you know when I wrap up. Okay.
Okay.
I'll be done when I'm done.
Okay. Everybody sit back.
Well, let me get ready. Anybody got a fan?
I got my notes.
Just get the collection plate ready.
I got my
Okay. No, I want to affirm this week. The one thing I think a lot of us don't realize is that we're all struggling. There is no perfect way of living, and that all of the things that we have had to deal with, thank you, all the things we have to deal with in life are things that everyone is dealing with. This is not, we are all living a unique life, but we are all dealing with mainly a lot of the same things. And I think a lot of the things that I appreciate our therapist coming in and talking about was the simple fact that it's all about getting to know yourself. It's all about really stripping a lot of the things away that the rest of the world has put on you and really getting down to the core of who you are and affirming that person once you find that person. So my Afro shade for this week is that we're all on this journey. There is no one box, but know that if you're okay with walking into that you're going to find somebody that not only you will be able to love, but that you will be able to share that love with everybody else. And so I'm affirming for people to not be afraid of the things that are unknown about yourself, but to just take an opportunity to take a moment and say, do I really know myself? And if I don't know myself, is there somebody who can help me to know myself? And then there's somebody who can help me to grow into myself, because the person that you are is the person that we've always wanted to see from the very beginning. That person, though you may not know them, is exactly who we all need. And we are, I think at this table, we have all had to learn that though it does not look like what we thought it would look like at 20 or at 10, that the person we are becoming and the person that we have learned to become is exactly who we're supposed to be. And so I affirm for everybody to just really be okay that even if you don't know who you are going to be or who you are coming to be or who you were created to be, that person is exactly who you are to be. And that it's everything that we all are looking for, the rest of the world is looking for. So just be okay with that being that person that you're going to be, being exactly who they are supposed to be. And that though it may not look perfect, there is no perfect. I think we talked about there is no norm. There is no right or wrong way. But I just want to affirm for everybody that who you're going to be through this mental health journey is going to be exactly who you're supposed to be. So just be prepared for that and know that is going to be one of the greatest awakenings you can ever have. Where my money? You all have been talking about
where my money at?
Run me my money. They've been talking smack
What
all
kind of
these
reverend
weeks.
are you?
Right.
I'm wearing my usher outfit. Let me get the plate.
Thank you. Go ahead, walk around.
got your white
Everybody gotta
gloves?
contribute
I
too.
do.
All
I get my
I
gloves out.
know is it's your birthday, so you might want to calm down.
Again, where's my money?
I need my money.
Right.
Goodness.
Look,
gracious.
this is no shade, but since you're saying run you your money, I just want to, affirm that therapy can be affordable. If we let go of certain things in life and prioritize our mental health, it can become more affordable. I think I saw a full set of nails now costs like $50 for a full set.
That's
on the
cheap.
low
I'm
end.
about to say, is it?
Yeah, but a deductible is only like $30. So I'm just saying, nails therapy, right? Afford what you need.
What if that's part of my
Prioritize.
self-care regimen?
Right.
Say that again.
What if that's a part of my self-care regimen?
Yeah, I mean, if your nails can get in
Look.
there and get the anxiety out, I
All
say
right.
make it work.
Right.
So going from
Let's
like,
do it perfect.
Sounds like aftershave to me. Looking at that pink is mesmerizing. Anxiety be gone. Then you good, sis.
Right.
You can learn how to do it yourself.
Right. I'm in crisis right now, but my nails look good.
We need to make room for a fifth spot because that was good aftershave.
You just need to get your technician to get licensed, and that way you can be twofold.
Some of us like look really good on the outside, but on the inside, we are struggling.
That's a word.
And so the hair
Say
is
it on
done,
me,
the
Lord.
nails done. We got, HBO Cinemax, all the different channels
She
that
don't
we
have
can
those.
streamline, right? But
You know, she was talking about me. That was a generalization.
like all these add-ons. But
Sorry.
but really just prioritizing so that we put emphasis on like the whole being, right?
Yeah.
This thing can't look good and be completely functional if on the inside it's not. So we have to, think about investing like in our mental wellness. So
That's real.
yeah, run me my
That
money
was
too.
good. Okay.
This came on. She
Yes,
said,
yes.
I got y'all.
Right.
Hold this.
Let me do this.
Love it.
Oh, my purse.
I'll go unless you're ready.
Nope.
Okay. I think I want to affirm to our listeners and viewers, all 12 of you.
Yes.
That-
we love y'all.
12,000.
That's right. Claim it. I'm not beholden to numbers anymore. Sorry, I just talked about that.
Mhm.
Okay. I want to affirm validation for all of you. I really think that a lot of the struggles that we go through in our mental health journeys often stem from the idea that we are going through something alone, or we're going through something that other people don't understand, or we are making our problems worse because of how we're perceiving them, that they're not really this big, they're not really this bad, I'm being overly dramatic, or I'm just too sensitive. And I want to release you from that. I think that the biggest piece of therapy that has really helped me is just being seen, like being able to bring a situation to my therapist that has been irritating me or has troubled me, or it's like this thing that like reoccurs in different facets, and I can just bring it up and she'll be like immediately just like completely acknowledge how I feel without trying to make me not understand, but like I don't there doesn't have to be an in-depth analysis. It is immediately understood why it's irritating, and I don't have to try to like articulate it to help her understand why I don't like it. Like it is just, it is, and that the fact that it is enough, that it can be understood that it is an irritant, it is making you sad, it is, and it doesn't have to be deconstructed. It is okay to just feel it for what it is. And that's what I want to affirm for all of you.
Oh, that was good.
You felt passionate about that one. I could tell. So I will wrap up with, I want to affirm to our listeners that sometimes it's okay to be selfish and to water yourself, and whatever that looks like. We touched on a little bit earlier, like releasing that, the strong Black woman crown. And I've been seeing a lot on social media, like soft life, which I really am falling into. Is just like sometimes
that tracks. That tracks. We want that for you.
Thank you.
Yes.
I think that sometimes we don't have to carry the burden of everything all the time. I think as women and Black women in particular, we carry a lot of stresses and burdens of our families and our friends if you have children or a spouse. So I just kind of want us to stop. If you have to hire the housekeeper to clean your house because you don't feel like doing it or you can't, I think you should do that. If you need to go out to eat tomorrow night because cooking is going to be too much of a stress, you should do that too.
Do it, sis.
So I just really want us to be okay with watering ourselves and being comfortable with accepting help, whatever that looks like, and not letting other people make you feel bad for taking on what other people might see as luxuries, but for you, it's really just what you need in this moment just to get through the day or get through the week. And that's okay. So with that, thank everyone.
Yes.
Thank you, the Mind and Wellness Foundation, for really spearheading this episode for us. Like we have talked about it, but really digging in and taking it to another level. Like I know we're really appreciative of that.
Yes,
and thank you, LaTasha, for coming and being with us again. This has been a great conversation.
You can come back anytime.
Yes, absolutely. Because you're not accepting clients, I feel like we have to bring you back so we can have therapy. Since we can't come to your
therapy. I'm all about it, y'all.
All right. See you guys in 2 weeks.
Oh, wait. And thank you to the production team for
Yes.
helping
Oh,
us
yeah.
put everything
Yes,
together.
thank
You guys
you.
have been great. Thank
Absolutely.
you
Yes.
so much.
We're at People's TV Studios in Tacoma Park.
Yeah.
So if you need a studio, hit them up. All right.
Well,
Bye.
thanks.
Until next time.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.
Did we do it?
We're out.
Yay!